Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. It's 6:30, December 5th, and I'm calling the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, we have regrets from Councilors Dudek and Luschina. And Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councilor Knoll.
Thank you and good evening, Your Worship. I wish to declare pecuniary interest in item 7.1 on this evening's agenda. I am the CEO and a shareholder. Thank you, Kathy. I'm the CEO and shareholder of Film.ca Cinemas Inc. and Film.ca Productions Inc. We are tenants of the land at 171 Spears Road, which is a subject property that is part of the official plan amendment being considered this evening.
Thank you, Councilor Knoll. It would be in order for two of us to move and second resolution into Committee of the Whole. Councilor Elgar and Councilor Longo, thank you. Any objection? Madam Clerk, there's no objection and that carries. Thanks to Ward 4. I wonder if I could get a motion for consent items 4.1 and 4.2 from Councilor Adams and thereby give him a moment to offer a correction to 4.2. Councilor Adams?
Thank you very much. It's only to move the staff recommendation subject to changing the block number that's in the bylaw to block 6 instead of block 5. Typographical error.
And congratulations on the eagle-eyed catch. Any objection to the motion by Councilor Adams? There being none, that carries. Thank you. Now, the next consent item is separated so that we can receive delegations on the matter. And Councilor Nanda also has questions on the matter and a motion to amend the recommendation. And normally we hear the delegations first. In this particular case, it may be that the delegations would like to hear what your questions are and what your motion is before they begin, but I'm in your hands. How would you like to proceed, Councilor Nanda?
I was told that there will be a staff report or a presentation.
I believe there is a presentation available on a consent item. On a consent item, it's not normally scheduled. But Commissioner Garvey, do you have a presentation ready to go?
Your Worship, Mr. Hassan has a presentation available for Council.
All right. Thank you for being ready, sir. We're all ears.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Mayor Burden, members of Council, and members of the public participating in tonight's meeting. This brief presentation is an overview of item 4.3 on tonight's agenda regarding a request for report on Loyalist Trail. I'm joined by Eric Chan, Manager of Transportation Planning, who will be speaking to the transportation-related matters of the report. Let me go to the next. This is a summary of the report contents, which details various planning and transportation matters, such as the background which resulted in the request for report from staff, the location of future school sites, a chronology of the planning history and development applications, an overview of the provincial, regional, and town planning context, a number of transportation topics with traffic calming options and mitigation. This is an air photo map of Loyalist Trail, which ends at the easterly extent of the Star Oak subdivision. It's located north of Burnenthorpe Road, south of William Halton Parkway, east of 6th Line. The timing for the extension of Loyalist Trail to Trafalgar Road is unknown at this time, as it is dependent on the timing of multiple parcels of land to the east of the map, which require development application approval. This map is an excerpt from the report, which shows the North Oakville secondary plans with 3 school sites in proximity to Loyalist Trail. The first being number 1, the future elementary school as part of the Docasa subdivision. Number 2, the future elementary school as part of the MGO 3 subdivision. And finally, number 3, the future high school site as part of the 6 Oak Inc. development. This slide provides a chronology which is taken directly from the staff report, as it outlines the history of planning and development applications, which resulted in the creation of Loyalist Trail and the Tafia development site. The Oakville official plan was consolidated in 2006. The master plan and North Oakville East secondary plan were approved by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2008. The North Oakville zoning bylaw was approved by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2010. The zoning bylaw amendment and plan of subdivision applications for the Star Oak lands were approved by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2017. The Tafia Development Site Plan was approved earlier this year, followed by site alteration and construction this past summer. Overall, the planning and development process spans over 16 years. This is the Star Oak Neighborhood Information Map, which was a condition of approval for the draft plan of subdivision and required to be attached to all purchase and sale agreements. Some of the warning clauses related to the employment land use designation on the north side of Loyalist Trail are noted on the right side of the screen and can also be found in the staff report. This is a master plan of the North Oakville Master Plan, which again, similar to the North Oakville secondary plans, identifies a range of land use designations along Loyalist Trail. The Tafia development site is shown with the red arrow. Further to the Oakville Master Plan map, these two maps depict Loyalist Trail within the context of the official plan on the left and the zoning bylaw on the right. The Tafia development site is designated employment district and zoned light employment special provision 45. As seen in the parcel fabric on the zoning bylaw map on the right, the Tafia development site only has frontage along Loyalist Trail and is bound by a natural heritage system on the west and north, with a separate parcel of land to the east, which currently only has frontage along William Halton Parkway. This is an image of the site plan that was approved for the Tafia development property in June of this year, which illustrates 5 industrial and office buildings, parking areas, landscaping, and other details that were reviewed during the site plan application process. The application was submitted in July of 2021 and went through 3 circulations in order to address the staff and agency comments. And now I'll turn it over to Eric to review the transportation-related matters.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Eric Chen, Manager of Transportation Planning. In this slide, it shows that the road network surrounding the subject land consists of roads under the town's jurisdiction in light blue color, such as the Loyalist Trail, 6th Line, and Burnham-Ford Road, and the regional road in purple color, such as the William Halton Parkway and Trafalgar Road. Each road has its function and character, such as major and minor arterial and collector road. Traffic impact studies for the overall subdivision plan and for the site plan applications were reviewed and approved as part of the planning process. In summary, the traffic impact studies identify minimal peak and off-peak truck traffic generated by the site based on its completed and occupied state. Construction-related truck, however, could be higher than what is expected upon completion of development. This report and presentation were prepared in response to the resolution passed at the September 6th Planning and Development Council meeting to explore further possible ways to improve traffic safety, such as limiting trucks from using Loyalist Trail and countermeasures for speeding. This slide summarizes the 3 categories of traffic issues that staff is recommend to mitigate. 1 is to limit truck traffic. Truck traffic we have been seeing nowadays are for the construction activities on the Tafia site. Staff have installed permanent no heavy vehicles regulatory signs on residential streets such as Post Road, Eternity Way, and Phoenix Way. Staff have requested the contractor to use the truck route of Burnham-Ford, 6th Line, and Loyalist Trail, and minimizing truck construction activities by staging, and thereby avoiding cluster of trucks coming in at the same time. Second, speeding is a chronic traffic issue, and in this case, once the subdivision is assumed, traffic calming options can be explored through the town's traffic calming program, which is an empirical process with data collections, including public consultation and petition. Before then, staff have proactively reviewed the traffic calming options that are better suited for Loyalist Trail. Based on the preliminary research, radar speed display signs could be an effective device that display a driver's speed for both eastbound and westbound direction on Loyalist Trail. And lastly, staff heard the concerns about pedestrian crossing 6th Line at Loyalist to access the future high school. In the next few years, the town will initiate capital projects to improve the 6-line corridor and the Burham Ford corridor, including sidewalks, bike lanes, and intersection improvements. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Nanda, your next move.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a couple of questions that we would like to ask staff. One question being, can truck traffic be banned on Loyalist Trail?
Through you, Mayor Burton. The Tafia site is an employment site, as was mentioned, so it will generate truck traffic. We are unable to ban trucks completely from using Loyalist Trail because that is the only access that they have to that property. They're able to use that road for the legitimate purposes of accessing the Tafia site.
Also, can you limit the uses on employment lands to those that would not require trucks?
I'm going to turn to my colleagues in planning to answer that one.
Yeah, through Mayor Burton, as far as the zoning bylaw map, if I can pull that up again. Unfortunately, I don't have the uses identified in the presentation, but the uses permitted in the light employment zone would be part of the North Oakville zoning bylaw 2009-089. So in terms of limiting those uses, whatever is permitted in the zoning bylaw would be what we would find on the Tafia development site once construction is completed and occupancy permits are applied for.
Councillor Nanda, are you complete?
Councillor Chi will have a couple of questions, and then I'll have a motion.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know you're done. Councillor Shi.
I have a question. So what can enforcement to do, and what about the police role? Because I know there's our police enforcement officer cannot stop the moving trucks. Is that we have to be Horton police involved?
Mr. Mayor, I believe Jim Barry is online and might be able to answer questions about enforcement and the role of police.
And there he is, right on cue. And he's even unmuted.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Absolutely, as the councillor noted, from a municipal enforcement standpoint, our officers don't have the ability to enforce moving violations. That's only something that can be done through Halton Regional Police. And it's my understanding they are aware of this concern and are aware of the truck limits that are going up there. So I would suspect they'll do regular enforcement, although that will be constrained by their other duties as assigned. So although we can expect some enforcement, I'm not sure that it would be a regular everyday type of activity.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Would you like to make the public aware of the traffic concerns intake page on the Halton Regional Police Services website, which is a way for people to let the police know when they need attention for any traffic matter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you've done a great job. Of course, anybody that does have a concern can go to the the Halton Regional Police website and register a concern, and that will be prioritized through their regional traffic department, and they'll respond to that concern as they have resources.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. And just to put a line underneath that, the Halton Regional Police Service operates on a bit of a see something, say something basis. So if people see, if they see a violation, they should feel free to call the police or to use the web form to lodge the problem with the police. Councillor Shi, do you have more?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I have the last questions. Can traffic safety be again looked at when the Loyalist Trail assumed by the town? And what would be the step on? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Burton. So traffic safety will be assessed after the subdivision is assumed. So subdivision assumption is expected by the end of next year, 2023. So after that, we will need to do the data collection. That will be speed data and traffic volume data, and we will review the intersection sight lines. We will review the parking conditions and do a complete in-service road safety review, and we can report back after that.
Thank you.
Councillor Nanda?
Mayor, we would like to have maybe the delegates speak, and then I could speak after them.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you call the first delegation?
The first delegation on this item is Naveen Duran.
Mr. Duran, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship, and all the councillors and fellow citizens. I would like to ask two questions regarding the report that was generated by this for the traffic calming on Loyalist Trail. The first one is regarding the page 33, where if I quote from the report, it says, the study undertaken by the developers, the TAFIA's consultant, identified the number of trips anticipated from the proposed light industrial development to be 155 morning peak hour trips and 130 afternoon peak hour trips. So total of 285 trips, truck trips to the site. This is after the construction. So I don't think they consider the basic safety aspect of the residents here. So if you're looking at Loyalist Trail, there is a village square where the kids play on a daily basis, and then they board their buses to school, and elderly go for a walk, and there is a trail as well. So I don't think they consider that. And the next one is the future fire station on the same Loyalist Trail. So I don't think they looked at even that aspect as well. And the last one is the future high school at the end of the Loyalist Trail. So all of these are lining up on the same Loyalist Trail. Is there any reason why the safety aspect was not considered when putting this report together, or even approving this?
Well, sir, would you go back to the section of the report that you just quoted and maybe read it out slowly so the public can hear it?
Yeah, the study undertaken by the TAFIA developers consultant identified the total number of trips anticipated from the proposed light industrial development to be 155 morning peak hour trips and 130 afternoon peak hour trips.
And if you keep going, what does it say about trucks?
So this is all about the truck traffic, and they have roughly 344 parking spaces in the industrial site as well.
All right. Thank you very much for your information.
So the second question is regarding page 23, where I see the report was quoting the clauses from the agreement of purchase and sale, specifically two clauses, 29. So purchasers and tenants of all lots, blocks are advised that blocks 151, 52, 54 are identified for employment land. It never said, there would be an access to the employment land through this Loyalist Trail. And the other one is the clause 45. Purchasers are advised that their properties are adjacent to lands which may be developed for future residential, commercial, mixed commercial, residential, or employment uses. So it clearly states that there are going to be some kind of employment industrial properties over there, but it never mentioned clearly that there would be access through Loyalist Trail. So this is definitely misleading warning clauses that were put in the agreement of purchase and sale. I see that the report even pulled out the same clauses. So,
And
I will need your help. Is there any reason why the city is quoting those half-baked clauses within the report as such?
well, Commissioner, do you have an answer for the gentleman?
The warning clauses also include a map which shows that the frontage is on Loyalist Trail. So the implication is that the only access to those properties would be Loyalist Trail. It's not uncommon. This is the common practice that we would have. regarding the warning clauses that are presented at the sales offices.
Is there any reason why you are not showing the access through Loyalist Trail? Even if I was looking at the pictures that was presented in the report or in the PowerPoint, it was not showing the access.
Through you, Mr. Worship, what's presented in those documents is not a site plan. It's not intended to be a site plan. It's simply identifying potential uses adjacent to the properties in the vicinity. So from that regard, it actually does exactly what it was supposed to do. It is not intended, nor was there a development application at the time. The site plan process determines the exact specific location of the driveways, which comes later in the process. And as you can see from the timeline, was some years after the original approval of the subdivision and the original OPA for that matter.
Okay, and I have one message for you, Mr. Mayor. This is coming from my daughter. It's a special message for you.
And my friends, please help me with this issue. Mr. Mayor, my name is Akanksha. I am a grade 1 student in Ivy Rouge community. We don't want trucks near our park. It is not safe for me and my friends. Please help me with this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to reassure you and every resident that when the town has control of the roads, we will undertake traffic safety measures as they're necessary. Right now, what we have, it seems to me, is a great deal of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And when we get to completion of the subdivision, we will have clarity and we will be able to ensure that this neighborhood is as safe as any other.
But is there any way you could take the truck access from the Loyalist Trail, move it on to either William Halton Parkway or Trafalgar Road? You know, there are different options available, not the Loyalist Trail.
As I understand the report from staff, there is no such way.
Okay, thank you, Your Lordship.
I'd just like to read you the part you were quoting. The study undertaken by the developer's consultant identified the total number of trips anticipated from the proposed light industrial development to be 155 morning peak hour trips and 130 afternoon peak hour trips. The word truck does not appear in that sentence. The next sentence says, based on this total number of site trips and the type and size of the employment land use, the number of truck trips was calculated using a methodology that is commonly used in the professional industry standards in North America. It is calculated that the number of truck trips is 1 in a typical morning peak period and 1 in a typical afternoon peak period. Now, to be fair, I should read the rest of it, which is, it is noted that in the future, when the land is developed, the actual number of truck trips would fluctuate, and at times may have lower or higher volumes than the calculated truck trips as anticipated due to the operations of the facility by future tenants. I hope by reading this, I've helped you understand that the nature of the zoning for light employment, as is brought out in the staff report here, is not anticipated to generate very much truck traffic. And I hope that gives you some comfort. And when we get to completion, we'll see whether the report is right or you were right.
Okay, but Mayor, if there is a way you could address that before the completion of the construction, that would be much better.
Well,
I appreciate that.
there's going to be construction trucks in construction sites. That's part of what happens in subdivisions that are under construction. But thank you very much for taking the time to share your thoughts with us tonight.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Vinesh Galija.
Welcome, Mr. Galiga. Council looks forward to your information.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor Beaton, and good evening, all the council members and fellow residents over here. I have a presentation to present today for the Loyalist Trail. I live directly, now this is from my bedroom. The picture is taken from my bedroom, just opposite to the access point. Now, when we bought the property, as mentioned in the report too, it was mentioned as employment zone, but the access point was not mentioned. And we as residents always think why we were not involved when as if they were submitted in 2021 and approved in June of 2022 for the project. We were not involved, and none of the neighborhoods. I moved in April of 2021 for the project, and none of them we got letters or any notice to get us involved for the access point. And like the trucks ignore the rules and signs. When we tell the driver there's a sign you can't enter, they argued and be rude to us. They also reverse into the access, which means they have to turn illegally into the side entrance streets to do this. And I have pictures further which will show that. Trucks have caused a lot of noise and mud and dirt in the streets. When we call the bylaw officer and police, they say they cannot act because when they come, the trucks are not there. And when I last conversed with the bylaw officer over there, what he says, this mud and pebble stones are common. If there is a chunk of mud, then only it's a violation. Otherwise, it's very normal. Even if the builder doesn't clean the roads after the mess he creates on the entire Loyalist Trail, that is fine with the bylaw officer who was there on duty that day. With someone reported for the mud, not me, but someone in the community reported, and that was his reply. Now, trucks have, in this matter, it's a time before a child or a neighbor is hit or, God forbid, killed by a truck. Will you, council members, take your concise and take responsibility of the child or a resident is hit by a truck or injured or killed? We want no truck large on Loyalist Trail after construction is complete. So can I forward with my slides, please? So what I want is no truck for the, this is what the picture taken with the dust uh, in the morning school hours time. You see how the trucks are traveling. And this guy, I took the picture, I stopped him and I spoke to him. He was over 50 limit when the bus arrived. So my daughter just crossed before him. He didn't even want to stop when kids were crossing. So I warned him, did you realize the kids were crossing and you were over 50 just before the bus? He said, sorry, I was not observing it. So you can take my supervisor number and talk to him. So I took his supervisor number, raised a complaint, but he admitted, and that's the number plate, he admitted he was over speed and he didn't see my kid crossing the towards the bus. So this is what is exactly happening. Next slide, please. And this is the park in the neighborhood, and this is how at the school time when you see kids with the bags and the trucks are parked on both the sides and they are keeping on idling. It's not they are parked and idling. So this is the exact time when the kids are there with the school bags. This is what the scene is there at the park near the bus stop. Next slide, please. And now this is a scenario where we complain about the muddy roads. As you can literally see, half of the road is totally muddy and half is clean. So this is the situation. The builder is not cleaning on a day-to-day basis. And this, when it winters snow, this might cause a way of accident. One of my neighbor was hit last year with a truck on the intersection. It couldn't stop. The truck hit his car and the car was for more than 6-7 months in the garage. And luckily, it was not any injury or any death out of that accident, but you never know what happens next. Next slide, please. Now, no parking. So this is a picture next to my home. Every 6 o'clock, these guys come and they keep on idling. There is a no parking sign over there, but still they do park till the gate opens to the site at 7 o'clock. So they keep on idling and they keep on parking. And we have reported to the city about this. But when the city comes to monitor, the trucks are not there. So like just seeing across to the site, this is what the actual problem we are facing. I have 3 kids and they're disturbing their sleep and they can't like concentrate on their schools because of not getting adequate sleep. So next slide, please. Yeah, see, this is the picture. They come in the morning and all are lined up next to my fence. They keep on idling and there is a no parking sign board over there, but they are just ignoring it and parking and idling. Next slide, please. Now, this is a truck Now to enter the site, they are reversing inside the crescent. So this is not Loyalist Trail. This is inside the crescent. Now these big trucks are not to meant on Loyalist Trail. That's what I'm saying. No trucks on Loyalist Trail because they can't enter the site, and every time they have to go inside the crescent, take a turn and go inside. So did you see a basketball court over there on the right hand side, guys? So this is the code. Now if the muddy streets, no kid without wearing a gloves can play basketball over here. And when we stop the driver, they are like rude to us and they're not following the signs for this. Next slide, please. Now, there's one more truck again going inside the crescent, turning back towards the site. So now this is the crescent, not Loyalist Trail. So no way Loyalist Trail is meant to handle these construction site trucks. So they have to enter in, and all the report says the calming the issue of trucks putting signs, but signs are put, but everyone is ignoring. And when we call, the trucks are gone. So the bylaw officer comes or the police comes. It's not practical. So sitting over here, we say, okay, we will put boards, we will put stop signs, we will educate the builder to do that. But on ground reality is this: the trucks, they're rude, they are arguing with us, and they are backing like this inside the crescent. Again, not on Loyalist Trail. Such a big truck is inside the crescent. Please, thank you. Next slide, please. And this one more thing, since they can't go inside the site, they are idling on Loyalist Trail continuously, and that's the forklift machine coming and picking one by one. Means this Loyalist Trail is not meant for even construction trucks to handle. So whatever study conducted or whatever, when the permit was given in June of 2022, I don't know whether they were recognizing like these trucks can't enter the site. So how possible it is for them to give them the permission to build a construction site without having. And in this report, they said there are chances of talking to the neighbors of the site and having an alternate route on William Halton's. That is the best way, but not using Loyalist Trail. And you see how muddy the whole road is, and they can't enter the site. So in this situation where these trucks are meant for construction for the next couple of years and they can't go directly, so either they are using the Crescent or the Phoenix Way or the other smaller routes to enter. And being practically even coming today, I can see all the Eternity Way full of mud and truck signs. Means trucks have gone through that inner roads and they're not following like only on Loyalist Trail. Yeah, this is a live picture from my bedroom. Yeah, next slide, please. So yeah, see one more truck. So these are like different trucks. I'm not showing you one picture. I'm showing you different trucks. And now this guy is reversing to the side, taking inside the Crescent. So again, you see all the mud in the inner street of the Crescent. None of the kid, as Naveen daughter said, none of the kid can play out. This was the summer time of 2022. We can't use our backyards from morning for having a cup of tea in the morning in the summertime because everyone is idling at 6 o'clock over there with the trucks. So I know none of the council members might have not visited the site. So these pictures will inform them of what actual residents are facing the problem. So it's more of explaining through pictures, not through words. Yeah. Next slide, please. Now this is midnight. Can you see 3 o'clock in the midnight? This truck came 3 o'clock in the midnight and disturbed everyone's sleep in the Crescent, and we couldn't sleep for the next couple of hours. So 3 o'clock, the whole night trucks were coming. From 3 o'clock, our sleep got disturbed. And this is a recording from my camera. They are again coming the Crescent 3 o'clock in the night. Now we have restrictions of them not entering and all, but see, practically no one is obeying. So for the next couple of years, if we still have Loyalist Trail as the access point for all these trucks, this is going to happen, and they're going to disturb the whole community. So yeah, in the morning time, okay, but in the midnight, 3 o'clock, when everyone has after a long work hours, people want to sleep for the next morning work, we can't do that. Next slide, please. See again 5 o'clock. See that day it was continuously from 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and it's reversing back into the side. So this shows how practically, without seeing the pictures, it's very difficult for someone to understand saying, okay, Loyalist Trail is for truck route, But no, look at that. They can't even enter the site without help of a Crescent or the inner roads. So that's what I see. Stop all this construction. First, figure it out how to have a separate access from William Halton's and not through Loyalist Trail. So safety concerns for the kids, for the residents, and also for the health. If they are disturbing 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the night, and 5 o'clock, the city, when we call, we have to call after 8 o'clock to register a complaint. And now till that time, everyone is gone. So 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, no one is available to take a call. And we spend hours and hours following up in complaints and raising the ticket, but there's no actionable, no emails. Okay, this action was taken. So none of the, only tickets were raised, but none of the were like, okay, we took this action, we informed them. And again, the last picture, the truck coming in was on Friday. So if this was done in September, in November still trucks are coming in, means no action is taken at all. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. This was from the resident.
Thank you for your information. You had a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, sir. Is that with me?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Hirika Kalija.
Do you want to wait or do you want to go now? Okay. Madam Clerk, go ahead. Ms. Kaliga, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and other council members and fellow citizens. I will just add to Naveen and Vinesh because most of the slides we made together with the Vinesh. So my only concern, as he said, it's we have 3 kids, toddlers at home, and looking at those big trucks, I am not feeling safe to send them out for playing, which is right of every kid in the community, I feel so, not even in this community, but everywhere. So that's the only concern. And as you have mentioned, once the roads are assumed in 2023, then you can have some action to be taken. But till that time, where should my kids go to play, to go to the school for walk? I can't leave them alone outside. My older one is 12 years old. At least she has a freedom to go out and play, but which is not feasible at this time. That's the concern I just want to raise. Thank you.
Did you have a chance to read the staff report?
Yes, I did.
So you understand that there are barriers and constraints that we all have to put up with until the subdivision is finished.
I understand that, but as mentioned earlier, when there are signs and everyone, even I called the city for a lot of complaints. Just a small example, like there was a big vibration going on in the house, and I have a newborn too at home. He's 2 months old, and it caused a lot of, for me itself, it is causing a lot of ear pain, right? So he couldn't sleep in the daytime. I called the city. One of the member came, the staff came to home, but right the time when he came, the truck stopped doing the vibration. And the moment he left, within 5 minutes, it started again. So it's like, it was like, okay, they were known that someone is coming to check on them, and not even during the lunchtime. It was around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's not their lunchtime too. So it's like calling the city, I am agreeing that I can call, I can raise the tickets, but if there is any action, then it's helpful for us too.
Okay. Well, it's very regrettable that the subdivision wasn't complete before you moved in. And I'm told that it's going to be complete sometime next year. So I hope that when it is, you'll be happy with your new neighborhood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Elgar, did you want to ask your question now?
Sure. Thank you. Through staff, I've been up and visited the site, and I know what the residents are saying, and especially with the big trucks, it's because there's no turning at the end of the street. Right now, it just dead ends and into mud. Is there any way that for the short term, the developer could at least have, when you go straight down the street where it dead ends, to have a turning circle? Because like that's like bigger than a 45-foot trailer on the back of the, carrying the culverts. And it is hard. I know you can't, like, unloading and loading, I can understand why the trucks don't want to get into that mud. They're going to be stuck in there. It's going to be worse coming out. That street will be a disaster from those huge trucks. But is there any way we can ask the developer to do a temporary asphalt lay so they can do a turnaround? Because part of the problem is they're going down the streets with houses, which they're not supposed to. But if you were driving that truck, you would go down that street also because they don't have a place to turn the way it is currently.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's something that we can take away and have a conversation with the developer on. If there's a way to mitigate that, then we'll explore that with the developer. I do understand that the bulk of the heavy traffic with the carrying the culverts and so on have almost completed their work, so it hopefully will be a very short season, but we'll take that away and we'll explore that with the constructor.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation? Oh, Councillor O'Meara, sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship. Sorry, while we had the staff here, the delegate before raised some questions. It seemed to be like a complete lack of enforcement. And I know we have 24/7 enforcement, and it didn't seem like 3 o'clock trucks showing up, 5 o'clock trucks showing up. I wonder if staff might be able to speak to what we're doing to enforce on that. I mean, as far as I know, the province changed the rules to do construction from 6 in the morning to 10 at night, but not in between. So I'm wondering if staff might be able to speak to why we're not able to do any enforcement or to engage in and respond to some of these middle of the night construction trucks that are going on.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe I can help a little bit, although I don't have specific details on this. I am aware that we've been out in the past on complaints, and I think some of the delegates have mentioned that the enforcement has been out. Unfortunately, when we went out, the occurrences weren't occurring. So we do have 24-hour enforcement, and if the town number 905-845-6601 is called 24/7, municipal enforcement staff will be dispatched. So if there's a noise violation, which in some of these cases, that's what it seems to be, officers can deal with that. Again, the flip side of that are the vehicles traveling where they shouldn't, and that's something that Halton Regional Police can deal with. So there are methods to deal with it. The information I have with respect to this is on some of the occasions when we've been out, at least there has been no violation observed. And I know that we have gone out proactively some mornings because we did understand there was that issue occurring. And on those mornings, again, there was no violation observed. Now, I do also know that staff from Transportation and Engineering have spoken with the site superintendents to try and get them to curb any of the activity that we're talking about. So it's been a combined effort, but unfortunately to this point, we haven't found the violations that have been we've been advised of.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Berry. I know that also in order to lay charges, sometimes we need a witness, a willing witness and evidence. And we've got evidence, we have cameras, which seems to me we would have a willing witness. Why are we not able to go and levy charges against the truck or the company when we might have both of those elements in place?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, we'd have to look at the specific issue. Just because a truck goes down a road, again, that wouldn't necessarily be our violation. That would be a police violation. I wouldn't want to speak for what they could do. Whether it's a noise violation or not, because it goes down the road, we'd have to take every situation individually. And I haven't been made aware that there's been evidence provided that would lead us to be able to issue a charge in any of these cases.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Commissioner, as long as we're, Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just following up on Councillor Elgar's question about the ability to have a turning circle put in place on a temporary basis at the end of the road. I just wanted to clarify with staff, we don't have any method to compel that to be done. Is that correct? I don't want to leave the residents going away thinking that they're going to get a turning circle for the trucks and it's going to be a done thing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We don't have any way of compelling that. I'm not sure of the land ownership at the end of the street, and certainly if it's on someone else's land, we certainly can't compel that. We can encourage a cooperation. We can encourage exploration, but we may not be able to compel a turning circle of any type. But we can explore it and see if there are options. Just like one of the comments we've heard tonight is, can access be given on William Halton Parkway instead? This property does not have frontage on William Halton Parkway. However, over time, we can work with the adjoining neighbor to see if there's a way to combine driveways or provide an access out to William Halton, but there's no ability to compel it. So those are two of the solutions that have been presented that we don't really have a way of compelling, but we can certainly encourage create dialogue, whatever we can do to see if that's a possibility.
Thank you very much. I wanted to make sure that that perception was correct in the public realm.
Good point. Thank you, Councillor. Commissioner, on the matter of the dirty street, the muddy street, what's our standard? What do we require by way of keeping the street clean from the builder?
I might refer that question to Director Stephen if she's here. Yep, she might. She's more familiar with the details of clean streets than I am.
Ms. Stephen, what should we expect by way of performance here in terms of keeping the street clear?
Through you, Mayor Burton, we do follow up with the developers and their contractors regularly with respect to the street cleanliness. If the streets are not clean, we encourage folks to report that through Service Oakville, and a ticket is created for us to review and direct that to be done. Our contractors, or sorry, our developers' contractors are cleaning the streets on a regular basis. As the winter is coming, they would be doing that more frequently, but that's also generating more dirt because of the wet soil conditions. So we will follow up with the developers consultant to have that cleaned up again this week, and to encourage them to ensure that that's regularly monitored based on the current site conditions with that wet soil.
Thank you for that. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation, please?
The last delegation is Hiba Rizvi on behalf of the Residents Association of Ward 7.
Welcome, Ms. Rizvi. Council looks forward to your information.
Your Worship, respectable councils, thank you, Vinesh, for a very insightful presentation. I'm not going to take time up going over the same points. I think what we're really concerned about right now is that the community we live in, Ward 7, was built as part of a walkable urban Oakville plan. We have a large population of kids, and these concerns have been coming up over the last few months. We do have a very, very large student body that is walking to school. Again, we have a large number of buses that come to bus high schoolers away. So I'm not even going past into what's going to happen when the new high school comes up. I think a concern right now is, what are we doing now? I think they mentioned that this construction is going to go on, like the assumption of the streets won't happen till 2023. Are we to also believe that the inner streets, Post Road, Eternity Way, and the Crescent are not assumed right now by the town? Like, are they assumed or not? If they are assumed, so I mean, I'm not really clear whether it's just the Lois Parkway that's not assumed or even the inner streets. Because if the inner streets are assumed, the question arises that these truckers, especially the big wheelers with all that heavy material, it could take one incident where one of those could tip over. The chances are very often, I mean, our kids play on the streets, they play basketball, as one of the ladies mentioned. That is what this community is built out of. So just putting it off till when we assume streets is a little bit of a concern for us, because that means we're waiting with no definite end time in position. So what we're hoping and we're asking is, there has to be some way that we could probably limit the way these trucks are accessing these streets. Perhaps we could put some timelines, especially when the school's on and off, or at park times. I know it's difficult, but for them to just come and park right where bus stops are, maybe make those completely off limits where the buses are stopping to have kids on and off, because I have personally seen incidences where they just don't stop. They just zoom past, and it's scary. If you're a resident living in that area, watching what's going on, it is actually scary, and you just hope that it's not your child who's being affected, because it could be just, the truck pulling out and a child falling and slipping. So what I'm urging as councillors is I know this is, eventually everything will calm. I've been living here for 13 years, so I've gone through construction, both when we were living on the west of Preserve and now east of Preserve. So I understand, I've read the reports thoroughly, but I think there has to be something more as conscious citizens that we can do to make sure that this doesn't become something that's not fair for kids who are living there and in a community that's physically based on the plan that's going to be a livable, walkable community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. Commissioner, could you answer the question about what streets have been assumed and And is there any precision about when assumption might occur? Ms. Stephen, perhaps?
Yeah. Through you, Mayor Burton, all of this, none of the streets within the subdivision have been assumed at this point. Assumption happens after the surface course asphalt is placed, so that was placed this fall. It has to go over the winter time, and then the developer can ask for assumption in the spring. That request generally comes in before the end of May if it's going to be made in the spring. And then we would work through the process to do the assumption throughout the rest of the year. So that's why we've been saying end of 2023 as the expected timeline. We would assume all of the roads together because they all had their top coat of asphalt done at the same time.
Could you just give us a little bit of clarity about that phrase, the entire rest of the year, if that's what you said, about studying the assumption? Does that mean December is when we assume?
Through you, Mayor Burton. So it's not just the surface course asphalt that we're looking at for assuming the infrastructure within the subdivision. That's why it takes us a bit of time. So they have to request it in the spring, and then we have to review all of the infrastructure that was built as part of the subdivision, and that will take us some time. So it will depend on the number of assumption requests we get. That's why we were just saying the end of the year while we look at what other requests we get in next spring.
I see, I believe, I understand. Thank you for the answer. Thank you for the delegation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I would like to start off by saying, I want to thank the residents of Ivy Rouge. They've come out to delegate, and we've been hearing for quite a while now at how they feel and how they're not happy about the situation. I can say personally that I have been to the area multiple times, and as we've said, it is very difficult and might be difficult for my council colleagues and others to understand the situation unless you've actually been there yourself. And as a mother who has young children as well, I've seen that if I were not able to send my kids to the park, how difficult that would be and how it would impact our community. And I think the greatest concern here is public safety. So I think because of the public safety issue is why the residents have been so passionate about coming and speaking to this issue, because we want to be able to understand how this is going to impact our community. And for this reason, I know that it is very important to our residents. And for that reason, in addition to the staff report, I would like to put forth a motion that staff report back related to traffic safety on Loyalist Trail following assumption of the road.
Thank you very much, Councillor. If you're moving the staff recommendation, it's your privilege to add that, and I'd be glad to accept that as the motion on the matter. Is that your intention?
Yes, thank you.
Is there any objection to the motion by Councillor Nanda? Madam Clerk, seeing none, Councillor Nanda's motion carries. Congratulations, Councillor Nanda.
Thank you.
Council, we have no confidential consent items, and that brings us directly to our public hearing items. Now, this public hearing item and the next one are information or issue collecting presentations. This is not a decision. This is a call for concerns and questions about two proposed planning matters. The first one is going to be presented by Kate Coburn, our senior planner, and good news, she's going to do the second one too when we get done with the first one. She's going to say, and I'm going to say as well, that people watching the live stream of the meeting on oakville.ca who wish to speak to the item can call 905-815-6095 and be connected to the meeting and called upon to speak following the registered delegations. And we have one registered delegation representing, who's a planner representing the application, who's available for questions but doesn't have a presentation or a delegation to make otherwise. Ms. Coburn, we are all eyes and ears for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good to see you everybody again. The application before you this evening is a draft plan of subdivision, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment that have been submitted by Glenn Schnarr and Associates on behalf of their client, Eaglewood Communities, Inc. And as the mayor had said, and I will repeat, if there is anyone watching the live stream of the meeting on oakville.ca, you can speak to this matter by calling into 905-815-6095. And we will connect you to the meeting, and you'll be called upon to speak as a delegate. The report can be found as item 6.1 of tonight's agenda, and it relates to the development of lands that are designated for medium-density development. The application was modified from its original submission to include a new public lane as well. And the purpose of tonight's meeting, as said, is to introduce this application or set of applications to council and the public and obtain further comments for review as it relates to the proposal. I will also say that due to a notice irregularity, staff will require an additional public meeting at a future date, and it will be held at the same time as the future recommendation report, so we can stay tuned for that. The applicant held a public information meeting on January 27th of 2022, and prior to this meeting, we've received no letters of objection to date. The property is located on the west side of Bronte Road, south of Upper Middle Road, and is part of a larger area which includes lands to the north and south, which is an area known as the Bronte Road West lands. The lands were included in the Merton Planning Study, and as a result of the Ontario Municipal Board hearing that was held, these lands were subsequently designated as medium-density residential with a parkway belt overlay, and there were special exemption policies which are included in section Part E, of the Livable Oakville Plan. The applicant proposes to develop approximately 0.44 hectares of land for a 4-story residential building, which will contain 71 units and 1 level of underground parking and a new public lane. The purpose of the public lane is to provide the property to the north with access and servicing for any future development that is contemplated in line with the Livable Official Plan. As mentioned, the subject lands are designated medium-density residential with a Parkway Belt overlay, which makes the land subject to the Parkway Belt West Plan. The applicant has submitted an application to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing to remove the lands from the Parkway Belt West Plan, and it is currently under review. The Bronte Road West lands are to be developed in a comprehensive manner in accordance with the development concept that has been included in the official plan and takes into account stormwater management, built and natural heritage preservation and protection, and transportation. The subject lands are dependent on the lands to the south, which will provide a remnant parcel to facilitate this development. It will provide site access, servicing, and the majority of the stormwater management control. These lands were formerly known as the ENS lands, and a development application was presented to council in May of 2022. Those applications have since been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for non-decision. The property is zoned Parkway Belt, and the applicant is proposing to rezone the lands to a modified RM4 zone. And this will permit apartment buildings up to 4 stories and a maximum height of 15 meters. The applicant proposes modifications to the height in meters and setbacks that will accommodate the proposal. And the draft zoning bylaw can be found in Appendix C of the staff report. The next 2 slides reflect the various matters identified by staff to date and are captured in the staff report. All of the comments together included in the staff report and those raised tonight by members of the public and council will be addressed as part of the future recommendation report. In general, these include removal of the lands from the Parkway Belt West Plan in consistency with applicable provincial and local policies, as well as conformity with the development concept for the Bronte Road West lands, coordination of this development and those developments to the north and south, protection of the natural heritage system, the size and location of stormwater management facilities, the design and alignment of the proposed road and roadways, the optimal use of the site, conformity with applicable urban design direction, an evaluation of on-street and visitor parking opportunities, and last but not least, evaluation of the proposal with respect to applicable provisions of the Planning Act. Before you is the recommendation that's included in the staff report, and in conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forward that the public meeting report as prepared by Planning Services be received, and the comments included with respect to this application be also received, and that staff will further consider any comments that are provided tonight by council and the public. And we will be coming back to you with a recommendation at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coburn. Madam Clerk, are there any phone-in delegations to our call for interested comments?
No, there is not.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you very much, Ms. Coburn. I do have a couple questions, or something that I would like staff to maybe report back on. The changing of the setbacks to 3.5 meters from Brawny Road. Brawny Road is staked to be expanded as well to a 6-lane roadway. Is this acceptable to the residents that are going to live there? Is this something that they're going to tolerate being so close to, depending on how the CN logistics hub goes and what sort of truck traffic we're going to have on that road, to have trucks about 10 feet away from the front door of residences? I'm wondering if we can comment on that. Again, my second point really speaks to the density, and we know that I'm having troubles landing on a word for the OMB, OLT, OP, whatever it is now. So I'm calling it the tribunal because in many different facets it's made its decisions. It deemed through the Merton study that this property should be zoned for medium density. From what my numbers, and thank for your assistance, the numbers of 71 units on 0.44 hectares comes out to about 215 units per site hectare, whereas our medium density ranges go from 30 to 50 units per site hectare. So at what point is this not medium density? And can we please look into whether this is adhering to what the tribunal's settlement arrangements were when those were deemed necessary? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar? Councillor Elgar, would you like to wait till the rest of Ward 1 has?
Sure.
I just saw Councillor McNeice light his hand. Councillor McNeice, your turn.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, I'd like to echo Councillor O'Meara's concerns about the medium density and the precedent it could set at other sites as well. I mean, it certainly looks like high density that's trying to get away with medium density. Just adding to the list of concerns, I know as a town we're advocating for complete communities that are walkable, bikeable. Looking at this with the neighboring properties to the north and south, as well as the east side of Brawny Road, and knowing some of the concerns up at Brawny Creek and Palermo, the access to those amenities is challenged. So if we could add to the list just the concept of the complete community here, because I'm sort of not seeing it as proposed. And just one other thing on the public consultation, I know notice in Appendix E says that given a lack of residents' attendance at the meeting, there was little discussion and feedback provided. So I know that there is another one coming up if there's anything we could do to increase that public consultation. I know there's not a lot of residents that are neighboring it, or a lot of those properties have changed hands. So I think we'll have to work extra hard to understand the community's voice with this proposal. And then, finally, one more. Around the parking standard, I noticed that there's a lot of 2-bedroom units here. So of the 71, 59 are 2 bedrooms, just a couple 1 bedrooms, 1 bedroom plus den. And if I'm reading that right, the total parking is 111 units. So if each 2-bedroom has 2 cars, they're by and large taking more than that in parking. Now, there is some transit access, but it's not, as proposed, a walkable transit-friendly community. I guess that could be argued. But I also don't see visitor parking spaces listed either. And knowing that there aren't, there's a laneway, not really public roads, I'm just concerned, where does this overflow parking go? So that's my list. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Elgar, your turn at last.
Through you, Mayor Burton, I really, both councillors covered my concerns, which are noise when the widen Bronte Road, and also that it will not be walkable for a school, I don't believe, in that location. So those would be two things that I think if maybe you could address. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. All right. Oh, sure enough. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Just in terms of the site, the noise, there's a buffer noise wall on the west side, the east side of Bronte, I believe. Is this site, is that a consideration? It was related to the regional woodland site, and I just wanted, has that been investigated at all?
Through you, Mayor Burton, that's definitely something that we could take back, Councillor, and look into. I know that the works yard, the regional works yard that's on the east side of Bronte, did have an evaluation done with respect to noise retention as it related to the Bronte Green subdivision on that side and those impacted residents. We can definitely look into whether or not the noise studies that were completed for that report, we can go back to the region and find out if that noise is intended to carry over beyond, let's say, the road volume or road noise we would otherwise get from Bronte Road. So we can look into that and report back.
I'd appreciate that. And my other question is just in general. So from an overlay, the Parkway Belt, there are other lands around that have the Parkway Belt. Are they at risk at being, having a full removal of the Parkway Belt? And if they are, what's the underlying zone of those on the east side?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and maybe perhaps I can rely on my tech colleagues here to pull the presentation back up. And I can pull up the official plan map that showed that overlay that we're speaking about. So as you can see, in black, Councillor, that is the subject site. But the area that's bound by the black dotted line, if you will, that is the area that's known as the Bronte Road West lands. And you can see on the image, there is a dotted green pattern that goes over these lands. That is the Parkway Belt overlay as it affects the Bronte Road West lands as a whole. Each of these properties are expected to have the Parkway Belt West plan removed in order to facilitate those underlying designations, which you see there in the darker yellow, which is the medium density, the lighter yellow, which is low density, and then we have our natural buffer around the southern portion of these lands. As I mentioned, for this site, that application with the ministry is still under review. As we heard back in May for the lands to the south, those lands have been removed from the Parkway Belt West plan.
So I'm looking at the picture and I'm going to the east side. I'm just wondering about those lands that are dotted around in black. Are they, is the underlying looks like it is natural heritage. Sorry, my eyes are not zeroing in on it very well. So on the east side, would that Parkway Belt, what's the underlying zoning for that Parkway Belt?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we can see that underneath on the east side, that kind of squiggly looking line, that the underlying element is natural area. Now, my understanding is that these lands have been actually conveyed to the town as part of the Bronte Green subdivision. So those are now under town ownership, is my understanding. So if the town were to make a request to have the Parkway Belt plan lifted, the underlying designation in that regard would still be natural area, and it would be under the town's purview to determine what they would choose to do there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. It's important land.
All right. Councillor O'Meara.
Your Worship, if there are no other delegation, I'd be happy to move receipt.
Councillor O'Meara, thank you for anticipating my request. Is there any objection to Councillor O'Meara's motion? There being none, that carries. I'm told that Councillor Nanda would like item 4.3 to have been a recorded vote. And I'll just ask if everybody would be satisfied with having the clerk record the names of everyone here. Everyone voted in favor of it, so we could just list them in the minutes, which is the point of it, or we could go through the actual procedure of calling everybody's name. Which is it that would satisfy you?
That would be fine, if everyone's agreed to it, if it's put into the minutes.
Okay.
That would be good. As
Madam
a
Clerk,
recorded vote.
council has consented to record everybody's names on this item.
Thank you.
So let's turn now to Kate's next presentation. And the same circumstances apply here in terms of our interest in hearing from people who are watching. If they have comments, they can give those comments by calling 905-815-6095. Kate will repeat that number in a moment for your convenience. And we have no registered delegations, but the planner for this application is available if there are questions. Kate, you have our attention again.
Excellent, thank you. Again, this evening before you is an application for a draft plan of subdivision. This has been submitted by Corsiac Urban Planning on behalf of their clients, Bronte Green Corporation, which we've just mentioned. This application was previously deferred from the June 27th, 2022 meeting at the applicant's request, and the application relates to a proposed subdivision of land for detached and townhouse dwelling units. The item can be found as 6.2 on tonight's agenda. And again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to introduce the application to council and members of the public and to obtain any further comments for review as it relates to the proposal. A public information meeting was not required for this proposal as the lands surrounding this development were owned by the developer or the region in this case at that time. The property is located on the east side of Bronte Road, west of Queens Plate Road, adjacent to the Bronte Green subdivision, which was approved through the former Ontario Municipal Board. The subject lands contain a stormwater management facility that was once owned by Halton Region and was part of their works yard, which you can see to the south on the image, south of Charles Cornwall Avenue. During the OMB hearing, Bronte Green Corporation acquired the adjacent Halton Region Public Works Yard. This acquisition allowed for the extension of the road network through the former Public Works Yard, which includes Merton Road, formerly Street B in their subdivision plan, Queens Plate Road, which was formerly Street G, and Charles Cornwall Avenue, which was formerly Street K in that plan of subdivision. The conveyance and construction of these roads were required as conditions of approval of the surrounding Bronte Green draft plan of subdivision. That OMB decision was issued on June 21st, 2017, and included the approval of amendments to official plan policies and zoning bylaw provisions which were applicable to the Public Works Yard. These approvals allowed for the subject lands to be used for residential purposes, subject to holding provisions. The application proposes to divide the lands to implement the in effect official plan designation and zoning. And this includes 6 lots for detached dwellings, plus a reserve block to be merged with the abutting subdivision, and 1 block that will accommodate 6 townhouse units, and a reserve block to be merged with the abutting subdivision for additional townhouse dwelling units. There are no zoning amendments required for this proposal. The subject lands are designated low-density residential fronting onto Queens Plate Road and medium-density residential fronting onto Merton Road. And as discussed, this was previously established through the OMB decision for Bronte Green. The existing zoning permits detached dwellings on the east side and townhouse dwellings on the west side. And the proposed land division complies with the in-effect zoning for the site with respect to the use, lot size, and the frontage. This slide reflects the various matters that have been identified by staff and have been captured in the report and will continue with review as the application is ongoing. These matters include consistency with applicable provincial policy, the regional official plan, livable Oakville official plan, provisions of the Planning Act, technical matters that are related to the decommissioning of the existing pond, and ensuring that there are appropriate stormwater management solutions for both the region's Woodward Center and the subject lands. Resolution of these matters may result in modifications to the application as the review continues. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forward the following recommendations as shown: that the public meeting report be received, that comments from the public with respect to the proposed draft plan be received, and that staff consider any additional comments provided by council this evening. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Coburn. Madam Clerk, did we attract any public input from our telephone number calling?
No, we did not.
Thank you. Councillor Elgar?
Thank you. Through you, Member Burton. Just a couple of things. I note the public's work yard is where the workers there test the police vehicle sirens and the ambulance sirens. And I know that I read where they've gone and they've said they're used to Ministry of Environment, ECC, NPC 300 guidelines. And will that be written, though, when it comes forward for people to buy the lot, there to be something in the sales trailer to say, please know you're pretty close to where the sirens are being tested, and I know they meet the NOT guidelines, but is that going to be done?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, that would be included as part of the draft plan conditions. That would be part of the package that would be brought for you should staff approve, recommend approval of the proposal at a future date. The warning clauses that you're also speaking to would be a requirement for the developer to include in any purchase and sale agreement, so they are aware of those particular noise concerns.
As long as they read that purchase and sales agreement that goes on forever, which they don't, that's the problem.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I could also advise that part of the draft plan conditions include information to be posted within the sales trailer itself, as well as a neighborhood information map that will include the site's location in proximity to the Woodward site as well.
Okay, maybe if you showed a picture of a siren off a police car too, it might help. But part two of that, note in clause 27.3.7.1, they talk about community, it's going to be complete community facilities such as a school, and then they have if required. Will that be just written that way in the sales trailer? Because I think everybody's aware around this table anyway that that school, if it is not, if the land is not purchased for the 4.5 acres by the Halton District School Board, the developer has an as-of right to build houses on that property, and the drop dead date is March of 2027. And I just want to make people aware so that they will know that the children will never have a walk to school. And in the Catholic system, they won't anyway. But in this system, it's still hanging there. But if you go to the board, you will see that it is not in their 10-year forecast to be done at all. They'd like to, but there's too many schools ahead of them. So that's a bit of a concern I think residents should know about. So if somehow when they go to buy and it's in the sales trailer, it's not just in the fine print. I know it'll be in the fine print, but the trouble is, it's hard to make everybody aware of little issues that come up later that we have to deal with. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. There being no other questions, I wonder if you'd move the indicated motion that the information be received and that the staff consider such comments as have been provided by council, in this case, you. Thank you, Councillor. Any objection to Councillor Elgar's motion? There being none, congratulations, Councillor. That carries. That brings us to item 6.3. This is a public meeting and recommendation report for the town-initiated official plan amendments dealing with Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act. We have a presentation from Charles McConnell, the manager of our West District, and Lee Musson, our manager of the East District. And if there are people watching the live stream of the meeting on oakville.ca and you wish to speak to this item, you may do so by calling 905-815-6095. And I'll bet you any money Mr. McConnell will repeat that for you for your convenience, and you'll be connected to the meeting. We have no registered delegations, and therefore, if you do call, you'll probably be connected sooner than you might have thought. Mr. McConnell, you have everybody's undivided attention.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council, you're correct, Your Worship. Anybody that does have any thoughts or comments with respect to tonight's proposal can call 905-815-6095, and we'll certainly respond to any concerns or questions they may have. So this is a public meeting and a recommendation report dealing with the official plan amendments 329 and 53, and this is the town's response to Bill 109, More Homes for Everyone's Act. So planning staff are proposing official plan amendments to address changes to the Planning Act resulting from Bill 109 from the provincial government, the More Homes for Everyone's Act, which has received royal assent April 14th of this year. So staff were empowered to address the implications of this legislation, and particularly what the legislation is proposing to do is outlined in the chart, which is in front of you. What it's doing, it's prescribing that development applications and site plan applications would be required to be processed within a certain time frame, after which refunds on a sliding scale would be required to be refunded to the applicant. So just quickly, the zoning amendment applications, after 90 days of the application being submitted, funds would have to be refunded again on a sliding scale up to 100% of those application fees. Likewise, with a combined official plan amendment and zoning amendment application after 120 days, then refunds would have to start being provided back to proponents, again up to 100% after 240 days. And likewise, with site plan applications on an even more condensed time frame after 60 days, then fees would have to start being refunded. So obviously that has significant implications on our operational aspects within the planning department and other departments. We rely on those funds to fund our operating budgets, as do other departments within the municipality. So that's a huge impact and certainly would have to respond to that accordingly. Because it's expedited timeframes, it could, and I would stress that, it could have implications on the type and the amount of public engagement that occurs throughout the planning process. So obviously, the planning process changes would be required. The status quo just wouldn't be acceptable anymore, so we have to look at what those changes could possibly be. One of which, and we may have heard through the media, different municipalities throughout Ontario are looking at the implications that it may have on their staffing. And some municipalities are significantly looking at increasing their planning complement. So we've met with our area municipal planning departments over the past number of months to really collaborate and brainstorm as to what are the different types of things that we could do to improve the efficiencies within our planning processes to meet those timelines. And that's really the purpose of tonight's official plan amendment. It's really to recognize a practice that we already do, and that's to make it a mandatory pre-application developer-hosted public information meeting. So before an application is actually submitted, we have required, and now it would be embedded within our official plans, to require an applicant to go out, hold a public information meeting, solicit the input from the general public, present their proposal to the public, and garner input. And then what we require is that the minutes of that meeting would be provided with the submission of an application to demonstrate what they heard from the public and how it may have informed the proposal going forward. So again, that is a practice that we have put in place for a number of years, and now it's just being mandated within our official plan. One of the other things that we're looking at doing to expedite the review of development applications is a voluntary pre-submission of technical studies. So before an application is actually submitted, it's the technical studies that can be very voluminous, very technical, and take a very long time to review. And that can really elongate the submission period of an application being in, and would certainly exceed the timelines in the table that I've shown to you. So what we're recommending to the development community on a voluntary basis, if they wanted to submit those technical studies in advance of the actual application being submitted, we could undertake that review of those technical studies and sort of come to a resolution or an understanding around the technical merits, be it an environmental report or a traffic report or whatever it might be. And then once that consensus has arrived on the technical merits, then the application could be submitted, and then we would have an appropriate amount of time to review the planning merits of the application, bring it forward to a statutory public meeting, and do the review of the application and bring a recommendation report forward to council within that prescribed timeframe. One of the other things that we may be looking at is the unbundling of applications. Again, if we're dealing with an official plan amendment, let's say, that's dealing with the very principle of use. So we would recommend that that be submitted solely before a more detailed implementing zoning bylaw or plan of subdivision or site plan application might be dealt with. So that could help us keep the issue scoped within an appropriate timeframe. Again, we're doing some administrative modifications to the planning process, one being the statutory public meeting report that you will start seeing in January. It'll just be a bit more of a streamlined, a more factual-based type of report, just to allow the planner working on the file a more speedy opportunity to prepare that report. One of the other things that we're recommending is that the applicant themselves present the public meeting or present their proposal at the public meeting. It would follow a very prescribed template of the technical issues surrounding that proposal. And as we do now, we would certainly hear from the public subsequent to that, and then the planner on the file could wrap up with identifying the issues that have been raised at the meeting, and would constitute part of the public record in the recommendation report that would come forward. The staff recommendation would only be, because it's such a condensed time frame, would have the luxury of doing a single circulation of that development application. Right now, it would certainly exceed the time frame that we have to deal with applications, because there isn't that punitive penalty at the end of refunding monies. So that allows for multiple circulations to occur, to resolve any technical issues, to enable staff to bring forward possibly on occasion a positive recommendation. That luxury won't exist anymore, so that's something that we have to be mindful of. So we would look at other tools possibly, such as the imposition of holding zones, which we do use now, and we may have to just use that more to, if the merits of the proposal warrant support, then we would just deal with any technical issues through the imposition of a holding zone. This also affects site plan applications, which is delegated to the Director of Planning for approval, but it's a very condensed time frame of only 60 days. So what we would be looking at is likewise understanding the principle of acceptance and bring that approval forward to our director for approval, but impose specific conditions that would have to be fulfilled prior to the issuance of a building permit. So those are the suite of modifications that we're looking at doing to address the impacts of Bill 109 so that we can process development applications within the prescribed timeframes without having to refund any monies. So as far as next steps go, we're continuing to engage our stakeholders to refine these planning processes. So it is a work in progress. We have communicated with the development community so that they understand what the impacts are of Bill 109 on our municipal processes, and we'll continue to adjust any processes or fees as necessary as we go forward. So there is a recommendation in the staff report, Your Worship, for consideration, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Councilor O'Meara. You want to arm wrestle Sean?
I'm just following the process of our technology, Your Worship.
All right.
Just a couple quick questions with respect to it. And I find a comment I'm going to make right now probably holds for a lot of people and council with respect to this very punitive situation for our planning. And it gives the impression or the view that the municipalities are the ones who are dragging their feet on this, and sometimes we don't have control of certain approvals that we have to go outside the realms of the municipality, whether it be conservation or whatever case may be. So I have real concerns with respect to how this is being presented by the province, but understanding the punitive way of doing this, we're giving refunds. Is it, when I'm listening to your comments and your presentation, Charles, Is it really the strategy we're doing this outside the realm of the application being submitted on an official basis? We're doing this outside the realm of the timeframe, a lot of this pre-work?
Through you, your worship, the technical review, and it's on a voluntary basis. We do offer that service now to applicants where we would do that technical pre-review. So again, that's nothing, brand new that is being put on the table. And if a proponent wants to take advantage of that, there's benefit to it. Otherwise, if that doesn't occur, then it's only it would be right from a public information meeting to the identification of what those technical studies are, and they would submit. We only have so much capacity and so much time frame in which to undertake that review. So if the study or technical study isn't quite adequate, then that's what we're commenting on. Okay. And it would most likely result in a recommendation of denial on that application.
Thank you, Charles. The second question is with respect to when an application comes forward, if say the applicant is not in agreement with this pre-consult, that just wants to put an application in, and we find there are a lot of issues and challenges, does the clock stop when it goes back to the developer because of they're not not following the guidelines under the Planning Act? Does the clock stop for us, or does it continue on that basis?
Through you, your worship, the clock does continue. So once the application is submitted, that's day one. They could take 50 days to resubmit or respond to development comments. The clock would still be ticking.
So maybe I'm just being devious here, but if I was a developer and I put an application in and I've got flaws in my application and then the town sends it back for refinement, why don't I just take my time and with respect to that, because the refunding would come that way? Maybe I'm being a little bit paranoid, but that's a strategy maybe that may be used by the developers down the line. I find it really disheartening when it's not our issue with the plan, it's with the developer, and now we're being penalized on their lack of due diligence with respect to their application. So I have concerns on this, but it is what it is, I guess. Thank you.
Councillor, perhaps the planners would like to use your questions as a springboard to discuss the tart comment by Greg Lintern, the planner in Toronto, because contemplating such a situation, Mr. Lintern had a solution, which you actually reference in your report this evening. Do you want to spell that out for the benefit of the council and the public?
Through you, your worship, if you're referring to the Stop the Clock initiative, because I've heard an awful lot of commentary from across the province. If it's related to that, that's one possible option. So when we would send the comments back to a proponent, and it's strictly in their control as to how long they want to take to respond to that, then the clock could stop ticking. And then we would just await the resubmission, and then the clock would start ticking again, right? So that's more, so we would be more in control of how we're responding within that time frame.
We'd love to have that, but we don't get that in this legislation, right?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And so Mr. Lintern had this tart advice to the industry, was, I'll give you a refusal by the deadline. And you'll notice in Bill's letter to us and in the commentary that they attached from their the legal advice from Castles, you'll note that Bill wouldn't like us to do that. And they do make a funny statement in their letter about how they want to work cooperatively with their municipal partners, and they lament the sad situation where trust has been eroded and if not destroyed. I'll just read you the exact sentence because it's kind of cute coming from Bill. As an industry, we would like to move forward with all our municipal partners to create a system of enhanced trust and collaboration that has clearly been eroded over the years and diminishing our collective success. And I guess they don't own any mirrors. All right, but thank you for your question, Counselor, because I needed a springboard for that comment. Anybody else? Oh, on my screen, Counselor Haslett-Thiel, you get to go next.
I would ask Your Honor, if we figure out how you want us to indicate our intention to speak, if it's a hand or I'm good to do both, but I'm riding two horses here and I'm unsure of what you'd like.
So what I was doing was the first I noticed as you know, including hands in the air and hands on the screen. But I was schooled on that by a guy that's bigger than I am. And so I'm going by the screen now until I get further away from any threat. I'm joking. Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, and thank you, Sean. Okay, so I have a few comments. The terms of reference that will be, I guess, provided, it says updating the standard terms of reference. And I'm also noting that there's, I think I understood that if they attend the pre-consultation, that the developer will walk away or receive in a timely way, because the clock seems to be ticking very fast, what the issues are. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, a pre-consultation meeting would be held. We're endeavoring to update our terms of references as best as possible, so that when they come to the table and we identify what the submission requirements would be for that proposal, we're defining what those studies are, and they can base their submission based on those updated terms of reference. So they have the latest and the greatest information from us. Let's say if it's a traffic impact study, that would be the most up-to-date terms of reference for that particular study, so that when they in fact submit that TIS, in theory, it would align with our objectives as defined in that terms of reference. And again, in theory, it would be deemed acceptable. We would obviously have to review that, but it would hopefully be very much more aligned with our practices and principles.
So thank you for that. And would the public have access to those terms of reference if they had, because the report does an excellent job of reaffirming the public engagement and that you want a process where they can continue to participate. Will they have access to those terms of reference if they had questions about the kind of studies that were required?
Yes, through you, Your Worship, yes, the terms of reference are presently online, and then as we update them, then they would be reflected online as well.
Mayor Burton covered off my other question, which is, so obviously if they don't do their homework and don't submit quality to the expectations of those terms of reference, then we would have a public meeting that would issue a refusal?
So through you, Your Worship, when an application is submitted, we would schedule the public meeting immediately. We would get the feedback. At the same time, the application would be circulated out to our agency partners, our department partners, to get input based on these studies that presumably were undertaken in accordance with the terms of reference. If it comes back with significant deficiencies, let's say, based on those technical review, we're only going to have the capacity to undertake that single circulation. As the mayor alluded, there'd only be time because then staff would have to prepare a staff report based on those deficient comments that we received. So that's where it could likely result in a negative recommendation.
And it wouldn't come as a surprise to them based on the pre-consultation, the terms of reference, and the comments?
It shouldn't come as a surprise.
Okay. And then on the public information meeting that they will be required to have, will they have some details around outreach to the community, attendance? Because one of the frustrations that we have experienced and heard from councillors previously is that people don't show up or aren't aware because of the distance notification, or it's in a newer area, et cetera. So are there things in that, I'll call it checklist, that they have to do that could ensure that that public information meeting is conducted in an effective way and reaches more people?
Yeah, through you, your worship, they are required to do a circulation, as we would with a statutory public meeting, to do a similar circulation. There may be instances where it might be in say, a condominium building or a rental building. We could ask, because those are minimum standards, we could suggest that, alternate types of notification be provided as well. So it might be on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you very much for your answers. Thank you very much for the report and for putting public consultation at the heart of making sure that the process is improved, but still that the public can participate in this. I think it's, I'm anxious to see the enhancements to the terms of reference as well.
Thank you.
I think maybe I could supplement your line of questioning on consultation. Mr. McConnell, on page 3 of the Castle's letter, in the second paragraph, it appears that BUILD represents that the authority to require consultation does not extend to mandatory consultation with members of the public or other persons and public bodies. The Planning Act establishes these as municipal requirements, and they seem to be saying you can't push extra public consultation onto the industry. Is that our reading of it? I mean, well, it seems to me that's the plain reading of, I just read it. But what's our view of that? And are we consistent with that, or are we pushing back? Where's this at?
I haven't heard anything to the contrary, where it would not be within our scope of authority, as long as it's identified and prescribed in our official plan, and that's the purpose of these amendments, to make it a prescriptive requirement.
Okay, thanks for that. An extra reason to vote for these amendments. We turn now to the screen, and we find Councillor Grant's hand up, and it's your turn, Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Thank you for anticipating one of the questions I had about forcing mandatory pre-meetings. I think it's a great idea. It's something that we, Councillor Noel and I have done in our own ward, talked to the developers, talked to the planning staff, and made sure that before anything went out, at least they discussed matters of the public. When you said mandatory, it kind of blew my mind. I thought, oh, we can get away with that, but having read through the report, it didn't look like that was going to be something possible. Thank you for Councillor Haslett-Thiel for bringing up similar points, and Councillor Chisholm. The question I'm left with now then is, with voluntary front-ending, you're suggesting that the benefit would be that it would speed the process down the line. My concern then is, what do we lose down the line if we're speeding up the process for developers by voluntarily pre-consulting?
Through you, your worship, I don't know if it's a matter of losing something at the tail end of the process. What it might be doing is adding certainty to the process, where we've done the technical review, we've ironed out those technical issues earlier in the process, and that would help to inform the formal application and address the planning merits of that application. So the finish line isn't changing where that is in the process, but we're capturing the additional work in advance of the formal submission of the application.
But that would then undercut the benefit of voluntary reviews, wouldn't it?
If they participate in that voluntary process, again, in theory, it might help to address the review of the technical issues. If they choose not to participate in that, as the mayor alluded, it may, and the chief planner from the City of Toronto, it may result in a negative report. Our objective is not to go past that prescribed time frame. So what is the decision making within that prescribed time frame?
Okay, I guess this is the world we're living in now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. And over to Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship. The volunteer pre-submission or pre-consultation, can that be made mandatory?
Not the, through your worship, not the voluntary process. If they choose, because there is a fee associated with it, we would credit that fee back upon the application. But it is a voluntary process to participate outside of the formal application, where they submit those technical studies and we review it, and however many iterations might be necessary to undertake that review. Again, if they choose not to, no, that part couldn't be made mandatory, because then they would just say, okay, I'll submit it with the formal application. So it's outside of the formal application. That's why it's a voluntary process.
Okay. Is there any latitude in our sort of deemed complete criteria that starts the clock? And that we can, I know oftentimes, sometimes we'll get an application that's complete, but maybe not of high quality, and the clock starts, and then, quickly the clock is wound down and we're potential for appeal at any moment. Do we have that power to sort of increase that criteria?
Through your worship, good question. We've tried to do that in the past. I don't think the legislation allows us or precedents. So once a technical study is submitted, we can't do a qualitative review and say that's not acceptable. We're not going to start the clock from ticking. So
okay, but there's already criteria in place that if there's a missing section or this and that, but you have to take what they've submitted to you.
That's correct.
Okay, and just on the public consultation, I know it's been mentioned before. So once it's deemed complete, staff works with the developer to schedule that first meeting. Is there any guidance on, seeing we may have only 90 days, does that have to be conducted within 20 days or 30 days, or is it possible to have some sort of criteria so that there can be some time to listen to the application, provide some feedback, and you receive it back within the 90 or 120, depending on what it is?
So through your worship, if you're referring to the statutory public meeting after the application's submitted, that's within our control. So
okay.
As soon as the application is submitted and deemed complete, we will schedule that onto the next available Planning and Development Council meeting to get that formal input.
So the developer-led one would be before it's deemed complete, is that correct?
Yes, the public information meeting is the developer-led one. And then we would give them the circulation mailing list so that they do capture everybody. They would hold that meeting and then submit the minutes of that meeting with a formal application.
Okay, and we do have criteria for that meeting as well, is my understanding, that the notice goes out in advance. There's a certain radius, I believe it's 120 meters.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Just a couple quick questions. When you assessed the potential delays, is it earmarked which is developer versus the town versus any other party? As you kind of looked at is this based on past, or is this forecasting for the future to see that when you look at the chart of the refund going to 100% refund to no refund, how is that put together?
So through your worship, it was the province that established the timelines. Oakville planning staff, along with our Halton planning partners, again, we sat down, we collaborated, and looked at every opportunity, right? So if there were any issues with our internal processes, then we certainly discussed that to look at ways of refining and expediting and building in those efficiencies within our processes. By enhancing the terms of reference, we're providing greater guidance to the development community as to what our expectations are. But with respect to how long it takes them to resubmit, those are the types of things that are beyond our control. We acknowledge that. We're going to, notwithstanding if they want to stall or delay or it takes them a long time to respond, we will do what we need to do and continue to prepare a recommendation report so that it gets to this council within that prescribed timeframe.
So will Bill 25 have any changes from a conservation authority or from the regional planning review, will that have any impact here? Or is that not part of, because I'm just trying to understand if there are efficiencies that we can gain. His Bill 25, as we try to accelerate things, as the province does, is that going to have an impact to potentially, not lead to penalties?
If you're referring to Bill 23, I know we have.
Sorry, 23.
We have a very
There's no Bill
robust.
25. Yes,
okay.
Bill 23, thank you.
Right. I know there is a very robust presentation later this evening, so it might be best to await that presentation.
This is 109.
No, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. In due course, Bill 23 will conceivably bring future changes and amendments before us, but they'd be premature at this point.
Just a few.
All right, we're down to the last three that are showing their hands. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. Couple quick questions. So, and I'm sorry if this was answered. I've been furiously taking notes, so I want to be clear on this. What's the trigger to actually establish or to create the environment where the penalty has to be paid? Is it by application of the applicant, or is it automatic? So at 120 days or 90 days, whatever the particular penalty, the period is, do we have to immediately send a check out, or is it something that the applicant has to apply for?
Through you, Your Worship, that's a good question. I think we're still trying to understand what the mechanics would be for that submission. It may be upon the request, so we're still working with our legal department to understand the legal obligations, and we would certainly fulfill our legal obligation.
Okay, and the next part of that question is, can an applicant voluntarily stop the clock as a sign of cooperation? So, as an example, oh geez, the community was upset about this, we're gonna go back and tweak this, stop the clock. Is that something that can be done? Can they voluntarily stop the process so that we can have more time, or is it legislatively prescribed that they can't?
Through you, Your Worship, I don't believe they can. I don't know if they, and I think some of our municipal partners may be looking at that, like a waiver that the proponent might sign to do that. It still remains to be seen legally if that's the case. We'll certainly, look into that and take advantage, or employ every legal means possible to, enhance the process.
Is there enough detail in the legislation right now to make those determinations, or is this information to be coming in regulations?
I think through you, Your Worship, maybe be embedded in the regulations. Those are some of the finer legal points of the legislation that we would really have to consult with our legal department on.
So I heard from some of the other councillors, they asked questions about, can you do this, can you do that, based on the mitigation measures that you had stipulated in your presentation. Have all of those mitigation measures been actually analyzed to determine their compliance with legislation? So we heard that you can't require the pre-submission, but it's something we hope we're going to do in the poison pill as we won't approve the application. Has there been an analysis that we can actually, has been actually determined that we can actually do all those things with the ministry?
Your Worship, nothing that staff collectively and our municipal partners that we've identified. We've identified where it's voluntary on the proponent's part. A lot of it is our internal efficiencies that we're looking at doing. That's certainly within our purview to do just that. So yeah, we're confident that everything that we're proposing meets the intent of the legislation.
Okay, and just on the issue of the public information meetings, those new pre-council public information meetings, are they monitored by staff, or the only input you're getting is from minutes? Or is there an opportunity for staff to monitor those meetings?
Through you, Your Worship, very often staff will attend those public information meetings and observe, right? Because they are developer-led. They're led by their planning consultants. We prescribe the format of those meetings. So every single one that I have attended has been very competently and professionally run.
That's great. So just so that you have the confidence that the minutes are actually reflecting the real nature of those meetings. And the last piece of that is, will names and contact information from those minutes be provided to the town? Since they're their meetings, are they providing the actual details so we can stay in touch with those people that were interested enough to come out to the meetings?
Through you, Your Worship, we provide them with the mailing list of every residents within the area. I don't think the minutes reflect I'm not sure if it reflects the attendees at the meeting, but it we would circulate the same individuals.
At PIMS, we often have a sign-up sheet, so we can keep in touch with people once they've been at those meetings. Would that be something we would request, at least on a voluntary basis, so we can stay in touch with those folks and the councillors can be aware of who in their wards are concerned about applications?
Yes, we could certainly do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Worship, and thank you, Mr. McConnell.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor. As the build letter that was distributed today to everyone, and you may not have had a chance to scan it, they make very clear that they have no trouble with voluntary. They won't be forced, right? And that put me in mind of sort of like two groups of applicants. There must be applicants who are looking to get approval and therefore respecting our plans and cooperating. And then there, I guess, is a group that's also represented by Build that they want to make sure we understand are, if they're not looking for a fight, they're certainly on the behavior described, on the pressure created by this legislation, they must be looking for a visit to the tribunal, which curiously will take them longer than cooperating would, but who knows how their minds work. And that brings us to Councillor O'Meara. It's all right.
Thank you, Worship. It's okay, I'm used to be saying O'Meara back of the bus. It's all right. Thank you, Your Worship. So on the application that we discussed previously tonight on the Eaglewood, there were 32 supporting documents with that application for a zoning and an official plan amendment. Do we have staff internally who review every single one of those planning documents? Or of those supporting documents, sorry?
Through you, Your Worship, I can't quote verbatim the 32 documents that you're referring to. If they're the technical submissions, we have staff that can evaluate many. In instances where we don't have that capacity, then we would peer review that out to a consultant that could.
Okay, yeah, and I was just using that as an example. So 120 days to review what could be 30 pieces of supporting documents, some of which we would need to go outside and have peer reviewed. On average, 4 days to review a document, which may or may not be done internally. So my question is, have we looked at the list of things that we would require as supporting documents and said, we're not going to do that anymore because we don't have the time to do it? So issues like shadow studying, issues like traffic studies, issue like drainage, erosion, noise impact studies, have we considered this is an envelope that we just don't have time to do now, and we're not going to look at that because of these changes? Is that something that we've contemplated in trying to abide by what the province is making us do here?
Through you, Your Worship, at the pre-consultation meeting, that's a master checklist that we might have that has everything from A to Z on that list, and it's through that technical review meeting where staff, the various technical staff, will identify what would be germane to that application in order to consider and evaluate that application. And if it is, then we would ask for that study, and we would have the capacity to evaluate it or to have it peer reviewed. In the vast majority of cases, we would have the capacity to evaluate that appropriately, because we're identifying that because it's going to be, again, significant to the merits of that application. So without that information, then we would be shortchanging ourselves in the evaluation of that application. So it would be prudent to have that information so that we can assess the impact and evaluate against that development proposal, whether or not it's appropriate or could result in modification. It would be important for the public to understand the outcome of that technical study, and it would be important for this council to understand as well, to make the best informed planning decision.
And I totally agree, and I don't think there's anyone in this room who say the more information required makes a better decision. But I guess my question is, that put up against a time limit and financial penalties to us, can you foresee a time where we do not ask for studies because we don't have the time to review it as a staff?
Through you, Your Worship, I couldn't see a time, where we would say to ourselves, that study may be important, but we just don't have the time, so let's not ask for it. I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if it came to that.
Okay, so then just to follow that down the rabbit hole a little bit, we ask for all of the technical reports we think we're going to need to make a decision on this, which, you know, I think from our conversations in the past, Mr. McConnell, is next to impossible to do in the timelines. So we're setting ourselves, we're setting the process up so that it can't be done within the timeline. We work back from a 90-day decision. It's 2 weeks or 3 weeks before we have to have our reports in to come to council. So are we going to have a situation where it's almost inherent that we're not going to be able to do any of the work we can do in that timeline lest we incur fiscal penalties?
Through you, Your Worship, it's a challenge in processing applications within this time frame. So that's why we've looked at the best efforts to front end the review capacity so that we can inform ourselves and get that information once the clock does start ticking. The terms of, as we discussed, the terms of references are going to be enhanced as best as they can, so consultants can rely on the technical criteria by which they can prepare studies. We would have the capacity to do a single circulation of that application. So the timeframe does allow us that capacity to do that single review, get feedback within, let's say, 30 days to review. And if it addresses those terms of references appropriately, we could get appropriate responses in which to make an informed decision within that prescribed. So in theory, that's how we're hoping it works. So we're establishing what is that threshold whereby we can make a decision or make a recommendation on a proposal and bring that forward. And it'll either be a go or a no-go. So no, we can't, based on the information. If it's incomplete or inaccurate information that was submitted, we will say that in the staff report. Not to say that there's not a solution somewhere, but we're making a recommendation based on that submission and a single review of that submission. And if it got appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, that would be the position that we would have to put forward to the tribunal. We say there may be a solution there, but based on what they submitted, we're making a recommendation on that submission.
Okay, and just to sort of pull the last thread on that one, so if we don't have the information we think we need to make this decision, that will be a recommendation for denial then? Is that the outcome of that?
It very well could, yes, sir.
Okay. Then, and this might be a question for legal or maybe Commissioner Garb, what's our liability with regards to approving developments under the legislation that's proposed here? Because it's a rush to get it done. It's a rush to review. It's a rush to, the whole process is meant to speed up here. But what's our liability if we miss a drainage report or if soil erosion happens that we approve that we weren't? I'm not sure what our liability is on these sorts of things. I'm wondering if somebody might be able to enlighten me a little on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this line of questioning is a really important line of questioning because we will actually have to review how we review the important studies that are available. One of the reasons why we would present a refusal is because we're not comfortable with making a recommendation. And I will also say that the refusal is a moment in time. We still have the opportunity to work through the process as we get closer to the tribunal and do some of that work. But you raise an important question. We'll have to review what liability the municipality is willing to take. So, if we don't have the expertise, time, or effort to look at a specific study, then maybe we have to look at this, how the scope of which we're looking at. Bill 23 is also something that we have to overlay that because there are certain things we're not permitted to look at anymore. So we're going to have to look at as Mr. McConnell said, that list. We'll have to review that and see what important things do we need from this study. Can we scope it down so it's a narrower study? What liability is the municipality accepting if we don't do something, or conversely, we do something that we don't have complete information for? So it's a line of questioning that's really important that we have to overlay Bill 23 on, and that we don't have a comprehensive answer at this point in time.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that, that staff's got that in the front of their mind, because that's my worry too. So thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor. This discussion, I hope, reveals that when Greg Lintern was saying, fine, if this is what you want, you're going to get more refusals, he was being serious. And as our commissioner just pointed out, the refusal typically does not stop work until you show up at the tribunal. Many people, once they appeal us, then try to negotiate a settlement because they discover how long it's going to be before they get to the tribunal. And so they're going to wind up doing the work anyway. So like I said a minute ago, it's funny how some people's minds work, but one way or the other, they're going to do the work, and we're going to have our answers. The other thing that some planning directors and some other municipalities are talking about, and we are adopting in the material before us tonight on site plan approvals, we're adopting conditional approvals as a technique to meet the clock. I'm not saying beat the clock, I'm saying meet the clock. And in theory, a conditional approval might work in some other kinds of applications, and over time, our folks may come back with some variation on that, building on the site plan approval use of conditional approvals. And I appreciate the commissioner nodding his head as if that was true. So we now go to Councillor Adams and then Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you very much. I congratulate my colleagues because they've asked almost all my questions. I just have one very small one, which is, I believe we refer to some internal policy around public engagement for all of our meetings. Does that document include how meetings should be conducted, either in person, virtually, or hybrid? And how does that apply to the PIMs that the applicants would be posting?
Through you, Your Worship, right now, public information meetings are being held virtually. So there's a protocol for that occurring. It hasn't migrated into in-person meetings as of yet, or hybrid. As we have those questions posed to us, we'll adapt and ensure that they can happen appropriately.
All right, so depending on circumstances, we'll adapt that process. But would it refer to an internal policy or procedure around how the meetings are done? So it doesn't have to come back through council?
That would strictly be an internal protocol that we would put in place.
Thank you very much.
Come back.
All right, let's go to Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Great questions and delving into this challenge that we're going to have in the future. The only point you did make earlier, Charles, with respect to other municipalities looking at staffing complements and increases, do you foresee us increasing our staff complement, our FTEs, regarding this new legislation?
Through you, Your Worship, I might defer to my director to respond to that question. I'm not sure what operational issues it might have.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do anticipate increased level of workload created not only by Bill 109, but also by Bill 23. So you will see, for council's consideration, and you may see me begging for staff, but that will be part of our budget submission this year.
Thank you.
Just to help out on that answer, our budget considers all sources of revenue, including planning fees, and we adjust our planning fees to try to recover our planning costs. So don't panic yet.
So the intent is not to give out money, but have a good budget for staffing. So the 2.9 million possibilities, we want to keep that money, don't we? That's a rhetoric question. Thank you.
That is the point of the whole evening. That's right. We're not giving them any money back to these characters. Councillor Haslett-Thiel?
If this is the appropriate time, I'd be prepared to move the recommendation, Mayor Burton.
Councillor Haslett-Thiel, thank you very much. That is totally in order. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none in reality or on the screen, that carries. And I thank everybody for the great conversation and discussion. That brings us to discussion item 7.1, which is the recommendation report, official plan amendment for April Investments Limited, Trans-County Development Corporation Limited, and Oakville Developments concerning 560 to 584, 550, and 530 Kerr Street, and 131 and 171 Spears Road. And we have a presentation from Paul Barrett, our senior planner. We have registered delegations. I call council's attention to the late-breaking additional correspondence that was distributed. And the community seems to be well represented on the delegation list. And unless I mistake the signs, the CAO would like to kick things off. Madam Closey.
Mayor Burton, I just raised an issue on the previous item. It was a public meeting because we're looking at the adoption of both the OP and the bylaw. I believe there was delegations to be opened up on that one. So I didn't want to close that item off too soon without meeting the public meeting requirements of the Planning Act.
Oh, all right. I wasn't aware of any delegation. And the clerk tells me we have none. So, Madam CAO, was our decision therefore proper and everything's good?
If there were no delegations, then it would have been proper, but I didn't hear the request for delegations coming across. So the opportunity for someone in the audience to be able to delegate, I wasn't sure was there, and I just wanted to make sure we were sound in the decisions we were making.
All right. A last call for delegations on that item. Still none. Mr. McConnell, you and I read the telephone number for phone-in, right?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
So there you go. We've had belt suspenders and winter hat on that issue, I think. So moving back to Mr. Barrett. You have our full attention now, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship. This presentation will summarize the recommendation report for this official plan amendment application. You may recall that this application was deferred from the September 6 P&D Council meeting. The subject lands are comprised of 4.8 hectares consisting of 5 property parcels which are occupied by commercial buildings and located at the northwest corner of Kerr and Spears Road. I note that all of the landowners are applicants of the subject application except 171 Spears, which is highlighted in this image in green. The site context was an important consideration that is discussed in greater detail in the staff report. In this case, the subject lands are located within the Kerr Village growth area. The Lakeshore West GO rail line is located to the north, followed by employment. To the east is Kerr Street, then a commercial plaza and a 19 and 21-story apartment building. To the south is the Kerr Main Street and a stable residential neighborhood. And to the west is employment lands and the Spear Road corridor. The subject lands are located adjacent to the Kerr Street Underpass project, which has been deferred by Metrolinx, the Spears Road EA, and the planned Metrolinx Priority Bus as part of their frequent rapid transit network. 7 Oakville transit routes, and it's approximately 1.2 kilometers from the Oakville GO station, which is approximately a 15-minute walk. They're also within walking distance to the Kerr Village Main Street. So the site itself is quite accessible from a walkability and also a transit point of view. The comprehensive development plan provides for approximately 1,841 residential units in 11 buildings ranging in height from 8 to 28 stories with ground floor commercial. When considered relative to the existing livable Oakville policies, the 7 highlighted buildings would be seeking height increases above and beyond the existing livable Oakville policies, which permit 8 to 12 stories, 16 with bonusing. The purpose of this comprehensive development plan is to enact a policy framework to plan and coordinate future development of individual parcels and provision of supporting infrastructure in a phased, coordinated, and comprehensive basis. This is a policy requirement of Livable Oakville. Even though 171 Spears is not an applicant, it is necessary to include that parcel for the purposes of long-term planning to coordinate matters such as the location of the park, public roads, infrastructure, pedestrian walkways, equitable landowner cost-sharing policies as well. Next, I'll highlight key changes to the proposal since Council last saw this application at the statutory public meeting. In terms of tower heights were reduced and reoriented along Kerr Street at the intersection of Kerr and Spears Road, and height was redistributed to the northern edge of the site along the railway and towards the interior of the subject lands. What this did is it resulted in a reduction of shadow impacts on the surrounding public realm. In terms of the Kerr grade separation, with the grade separation of Kerr now deferred by Metrolinx, expropriations having already occurred, and temporary construction easements in place along the eastern edge of the subject lands, phasing of this redevelopment was necessary, together with updates to several reports and studies to assess interim phasing and also the existing capacity of transportation infrastructure. The phasing plan provides for initial phases of development to be concentrated more centrally within the subject lands. In this case, phase 1 and 2 are intended to be built before the underpass, with phase 3 and 4 following construction of the underpass. The proposed OPA now includes detailed phasing policies to coordinate development with existing and planned infrastructure. The amount of development permitted prior to construction of the Kerr grade separation is limited. This limit was partially based on the amount of peak vehicle trips generated. The peak trips generated from the first two phases equal about the same amount as the existing commercial plazas that are there today. Once additional transportation capacity is built via the Kerr Street underpass, the remaining phases could be built. This new policy would help coordinate development with the provision of transportation infrastructure. In terms of parks and open space, the proposed Central Park and the urban square at the northwest corner of Kerr Street and Spears Road remain consistent with what was proposed at the public meeting. However, several detailed policies were refined and added to the proposed OPA. The first one was the size and location of the urban park, mid-block pedestrian connections from the urban park to both Spears Road and Kerr Street were added as implementation policies as part of the official plan amendment. Secondly, the Central Park remains public. However, criteria under which stratified ownership of the park was developed and included in the draft official plan amendment. The proposed amendment addresses legal and maintenance aspects with stratification, the value of parkland dedication, and to ensure that the design of the park is not significantly compromised by what is located underneath. A high-quality public open space in this context does not mean trees and concrete planter boxes. The intent is for the park to look and function like a public park and provide a high-quality open space which will complement other planned open space such as the urban square and also private amenity spaces. Thirdly, the draft official plan amendment now includes policies to encourage private outdoor amenity space, such as on the top of building podiums or roofs of structured parking to complement the urban park and urban square. With the recent passing of Bill 23, there have been changes to parkland dedication since September. Bill 23 limits the maximum amount of land that can be conveyed or paid in lieu to be capped at 10% of the land or its value for sites under 5 hectares, such as this site. On an overall basis, the proposed OPA would comply with this new requirement, as the minimum size of the public park is 0.4 hectares and the overall site area is 4.8 hectares. In terms of land use compatibility, which was quite important given the context of this site, several land use compatibility policies have been added to the proposed OPA regarding compatibility between the proposed sensitive land uses and the rail corridor to the north, as well as the employment area to the north and west. Implementation will take place as part of future planning applications to ensure risk to public health and safety is minimized. Maintenance of the commercial function of this site, including the existing food store, was an important concern raised through public consultation. To address this concern, the minimum amount of ground floor commercial area required in the proposed OPA was increased. Under the proposed official plan amendment, maintenance of a food store is now encouraged, and a new policy was added to also specify the minimum ground floor commercial gross floor area of 3,000 square meters in the block where the existing food store is today. So that matches the size of the existing food store that's present on the site today. In terms of urban design, staff applied a comprehensive, integrated, and long-term approach to planning, which coordinated growth with infrastructure and provided a strong focus on urban design and placemaking, including improved amenities such as new parks, design treatment of the main street, enhanced streetscapes and pedestrian features, and also appropriate transitions. Several changes were made to refine the urban design brief and urban design policies, as well as to update the Kerr Village urban design schedule in the proposed official plan amendment. This includes identification of primary and secondary streets, policies for building podiums, tower design, green roofs, articulation of facades, treatment of above-grade parking structures, and the design of the public road. The new policies will provide a more detailed urban design policy framework which applies to buildings and, importantly, the spaces between buildings than the existing policy framework. Transportation was a key matter that was raised by council at the public meeting and also the public. To respond, staff retained an independent peer review consultant to review the transportation study. Based on the advice of the peer review consultant, staff are in general agreement that the comprehensive development plan could be supported by the existing proposed transportation system in a coordinated and phased manner, as proposed in the official plan amendment. The proposed official plan amendment will require detailed phasing plans and provide a framework for safe interim access points. Also, a new policy requires a transportation demand management and implementation strategy, which will develop strategies that will result in more efficient use of the transportation system by helping influence travel behavior. This will result in practical measures that are implementable, measurable, and are intended to achieve meaningful results. The proposed official plan amendment would require the strategy to be evaluated through the stages and phases of this development. This feedback loop built into the policy framework is intended to achieve a higher degree of accuracy on the transportation impacts and the opportunity to correct course through the development process if necessary. There are a few other matters I wanted to highlight with respect to the draft official plan amendment, three others to be specific. The first is that the proposed official plan amendment was amended by staff to also include policies regarding the future use of holding provisions. This was important to secure for upgrades and or replacements of required stormwater, road network, and water and wastewater infrastructure, the execution of agreements related to the urban park, and it may be used to secure the execution of cost-sharing agreements. This will assist the town in practically implementing the policies across the different ownership parcels. Secondly, in terms of cost sharing, given the fragmented ownership of the subject lands and the level of coordination needed to deliver infrastructure that spans numerous land parcels, cost-sharing policies have been proposed as part of this proposed official plan amendment. As part of the development process, a cost-sharing agreement, which will be required to be administered by and entered into amongst the landowners within the comprehensive development plan area. The cost-sharing agreement is required to demonstrate that costs associated with development, including the provision of parkland, infrastructure, and servicing, is distributed equitably amongst the landowners. Lastly, as the town can no longer use Section 37 of the Planning Act or bonusing to secure affordable housing, the proposed official plan amendment now encourages affordable housing by exempting the net floor area of affordable housing units. In terms of public comments, a number of public comments were received as part of this application and through the statutory public meeting, and I've listed the main concerns on this slide, which are outlined in more detail in the staff report. The first set of concerns were addressed in the staff report in the planning comments section. The second set, those are concerns that would be addressed through subsequent planning applications, such as site plan, plan of condo, and subdivision. The two that I wanted to highlight for council and the public is the concern with traffic utilizing Queen Mary Drive. That's something we had the peer review consultant and staff take a close look at, and it's explained in more detail in the staff report. However, the traffic from this proposed development is not anticipated to have a substantive impact on the operation characteristics of Queen Mary Drive. But staff will continue to review this matter through subsequent development applications. Secondly, the request for a discount grocery store to be maintained on the site. While the maintenance of a food store is encouraged by the existing livable Oakville policies, and the proposed OPA would also require a minimum amount of commercial GFA equal to the size of the existing grocery store, it's outside of the limits of the Planning Act to actually require a specific tenant or a discount grocery store instead of another type of grocery store. So we addressed that concern as far as we could within the limits of the Planning Act. In conclusion, staff are recommending approval of the revised comprehensive development plan, endorsement of the urban design brief, and approval of the proposed OPA for the reasons outlined on this slide. Based on staff's review, the proposal is consistent with the mission and guiding principles of Livable Oakville, and the proposed policies will help implement the goals and objectives of the Kerr Village growth area. The subject lands are located within a growth area served by existing and planned transit that will be part of a frequent rapid transit network. The proposed development represents a compact form of mixed-use development, which is planned to be transit supportive. For the reasons outlined in this report, this supports the town's urban structure. The subject lands are not part of the natural heritage system, do not contain cultural heritage resources, and the proposed policies will provide for appropriate transitions to the established residential areas together with land use compatibility policies. Also, the subject lands are located within a growth area, and the proposal is an efficient use of land. The proposed OPA provides transitions and phasing policies to coordinate growth with infrastructure. And lastly, for the reasons outlined in the report and subject to the policies in the proposed OPA, it is staff's opinion that the comprehensive development plan submitted as part of this OPA appropriately demonstrates the potential for full build-out of the lands. The policies in the proposed OPA represent good planning and are consistent with the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan and Halton plan. In conclusion, Your Worship, staff put forth the following recommendation as shown for Council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barrett, for your customary thorough approach. Council, we have a number of registered delegations. Unless you see it otherwise, I propose that we hear them now. Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations, please?
First delegation is Doug Sams, Executive Director of Kerr Village BIA.
Welcome, Mr. Sams. Thank you for your patience. We look forward to your information.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and council, and I'd like to also compliment Paul Barrett and his staff. They've been very helpful, have always taken my calls and have done a great job with the reports, but we do have some concerns. The Kerr Village BIA has a vested interest in this project due to the scope and its intricate undertaking. This development will have a lasting effect on the ecosystem of our community, including economic development, vibrancy, vitality, infrastructure, which also includes social infrastructure, services, and amenities. This calls for excellent planning and development, and I really think the planning part we're getting towards excellent, that will not create a cramped environment and provide the basic community service that will be required. So I'm going to tell you about a cautionary tale, and I would encourage staff, they may have already done this, but Liberty Village has had a lot of problems with their growth, and they built without having infrastructure in place. The higher the influx of people, the more demand and stress that will be placed on amenities, public services, and a creation of traffic problems if the right infrastructure is not already in place, such as the Kerr Street underpass. This calls for a coherent plan within the concept of complete community versus the desire of the developers to prioritize profit margins by creating a wall of glass that extends upwards, which excludes important elements of community living, vitality, and vibrancy. So the one thing that our board is concerned with, and I've heard from some merchants down in the Commons area, is don't rush to judgment. There is no need to rush into a development plan if not all property owners are on board and facilitation of infrastructure and other services cannot be put in place at the same time. The thought should be about building a neighborhood and community. There needs to be further dialogue by all parties. The Kerr Village BIA has concern about the amount of retail space that is being cut by over 50%. True, the store is going to be kept intact with the same square meters, but not the other commercial properties. People will be frustrated if certain amenities and services are not available to them. The area will not only serve the people residing in the condominiums, but also the community at large. And we have people that can walk, that don't have vehicles, that have to walk to the store right now. They go to the drugstore. There are essential examples such as a food store, such as an entertainment area, such as a drugstore. We don't want people to get frustrated. Part of the idea of a community is one that doesn't have to commute every day, that they reside and work and shop within the area. So we want to keep economic development in Oakville. So our conclusion is that we feel like this amendment and this project at this time should not move ahead until all property owners will be on board and further discussions needs to take place that includes all property owners, town staff, the developer, and its stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sams. Councilor O'Meara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sams. I was piqued by your comment that this will be a reduction in net retail space by 50%.
Yeah,
do you know how much?
It's over, I think what I was told the other day was over 10,000. So it's going down to 3.
Wow, okay.
Because you take into consideration all the stores there.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're big units. And to lose retail space when you're bringing in an influx of people, that's one of my pet peeves when I go around the province or I go around my area where I live. They're building a lot of places for people to live, but they're not building new commercial properties to shop, to go to be entertained. and it just gets more crowded and crowded and crowded, even the traffic. So there's a lot of things. It's hard to predict the future, but there's a lot of things to consider. It's really just, it gets a little bit complicated.
Thank you for that.
And Sean, there's no doubt that, I'm not saying that, there's no doubt it's going to be developed. But we have a chance right now. The underpass project was supposed to be in year 2, and it's not even close to being done. We have some time. So maybe it's a good time just to step back, take a deep breath, and look at everything closer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sams. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sams.
Thanks.
Oh. Well, don't tell me till I've dismissed him.
Darn, I was almost out of here. Okay, no, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So, through you, Mayor Burton, you mentioned Liberty Village. How does Liberty Village compare in size to this location?
Well, I believe I was told that the developer was the same. So, and I looked up some information, and what they did was they developed without having the infrastructure in place, and people are very frustrated, and there's not the infrastructure for services and amenities. So they're trying to work through that problem.
No, I just meant as far as the footprint goes for Liberty Village in square meters or whatever.
I can't tell you that one.
Okay.
That wasn't in the information that I got.
Okay, good enough. Yeah, because I think Liberty Village is around over 9,000 people in Liberty Village. Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Sams.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Elgar, the 2022 population estimate for Liberty Village appears to be over 9,000, 9,300 or something, so it might be a touch bigger. Councillor Haslett-Thiel, or shall I call the next delegation?
No, actually, my question was for Mr. Sams.
All righty, well, I'll repeat. Don't tell me before I dismiss the guy.
I had my hand up, sir. I'm really sorry.
That's all right. I'm getting my exercise. Thank you.
Getting those steps.
So you mentioned Liberty Village and scale and comparisons can often, apples and oranges type. But it's interesting that you raise it because I found a similar comment that really challenged that whether or not the planners had really seriously considered the community amenities that are necessary for a complete community. In fact, the frustration's kind of overwhelming in Liberty Village, particularly through the pandemic. However, what I would say, out of respect for our planners, is they have done an excellent job in thinking about the transit connection.
Agreed.
They have thought about some of the other elements, making that location viable. Did the BIA have any suggestions around commercial changing the OP?
Initially in our discussions, and this goes back a while, in our board meetings, it was like we were trying to maintain the commercial services, even though a new development was coming in. It would be nice to have those same opportunities for storefronts to be at the bottom of the condos. And, I was involved in a couple of those discussions on projects down Kerr Street where we talked about that. The architects actually came and met with us. And I'm referring to the senior living accommodation that's coming in to where the dog guides are. Because that was a big thing, because there was a couple obstacles on that, but we were consulted. But I think it's just, that's a lot of commercial property to square footage to lose when you're bringing in an influx of people. And the thing you don't want is people, they go down the street and they want to get service, and there's crowds, and you want to make sure your amenities are proportional to your growth and the people you're bringing into the area, because part of the ecosystem of a community is so they don't have to become a commuter community anymore, that they can walk, they live there, they work nearby, They have the opportunity to have green space, they walk down the street, but we got to make sure we have the businesses to service them. And, it puts the BIA, us in a tough spot because we like feet on the streets. But we also want to be able to serve those people so they don't get frustrated and want to go. We want them to stay in Oakville, be it Kerr Village, Brawny, downtown. And so it's just when you look at the overall scope, and my comments are no way in a bad reflection on town planning staff. It's just when I look around and I research the other issues that they've had that developers can present, that's what more I'm talking about. And I think there still needs to be collaboration by all parties. And because as you see things, as you build things, as you build a plan, is there any other accommodations we can make? Are we at the end of that accommodations? We just want to move on when we don't even have an underpass? So, and we don't even have all 5 property owners on board. I had a guy call me about 5 years ago, wanted to know about that property and who he could call, and I gave him the name of one of the owners, and I said, good luck getting them to agree on anything. Because, everybody has a different take on it. So those are my thoughts.
So thank you for your comments. Can I just ask Director Charles then to just answer, is there an option in the OPA to do what is being suggested by the BIA, which is to have some greater commercial, securing, of course, the importance of that grocery store?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the policies, as I read them, are to set up a minimum amount of commercial and retail. So through the subsequent processes, as Mr. Barrett had outlined, through subsequent zonings, through site plans, et cetera, we would be working then with the developers of the site to ensure that there is sufficient commercial and retail, whether and how it gets integrated into the development and across all of the properties.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. Unless Councillor Chisholm has questions for you. Councillor Chisholm is next.
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Doug, for your comments, and they're well documented with respect to the BIA. And as you know, you and I have had many discussions with respect to what's happening on Kerr Street. And we are of the opinion Kerr Street has needs a major retrofit. And this is probably a springboard for development to happen. But I would agree with you with respect to the application. It's all on the buildings themselves, and it lacks the understanding, and I understand the limitations within the Planning Act of what the commercial and I just for the public's information, this area is a catchment area of people who are limited income. They're on pensions. Some have lived in those apartments on Spears Road for 30 and 40 years. And there's a whole redevelopment going on, and we have a lot of fear of our residents in this area. That catchment area is important. As Doug indicated, our older generation walk with their carriages over to the grocery store. Now, the grocery store itself, as I know it's in the report, at 3,000 square. That's existing, and it does cater to the apartments in that area and also the residential adjacent. But the issue will be is now we're putting in 1,841 units, and you're still going to maintain 3,000 square foot of a grocery store. I don't think it's going to be adequate. So I'm really imploring staff to consider how we, as a complete community, how we're going to deal with this. You're taking away a vital link and a vital heart of this community by taking out the commercial and not having something in place with some kind of guarantees. In the report, it does say potential opportunities, but doesn't say there shall be. So there are challenges with this. And I'm kind of struggling with this report, as staff have done an excellent job on the details of it. But Doug, if we didn't put the underpass in, do you see that we should hold back on this development until such time the underpass is established and looking at the commercial component of it?
Well, the way I read it, you're better off doing it until the infrastructure is in place. Otherwise, it creates a lot of problems. And I do believe that when the project is complete, it is a requirement that that underpass be in place to handle the traffic that's going to come in there, the extra. And we already are a thoroughfare down through the tracks to come down through Kerr Street. Either it's a thorough way to get to downtown or to get to the lake shore. And so it is going to stress the area. So I'm not a planner, but from what I'm read, it's better to have the infrastructure in place.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm, and thank you again, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. Thank you for listening and your consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, or for that matter, Mr. Barrett, whoever wants to, I think it might be appropriate to explain the difference between an official plan amendment and an application to build, and that this is only the official plan amendment. And where I'm going with that is, as I understand it, the official plan amendment helps us get the infrastructure because it sets up a policy requirement to have the infrastructure. Does anybody want to discuss that?
Through Mr. Mayor, I can kick it off, and then others can augment as they see fit. But the official plan establishes the high-level principles in any particular area. This is a secondary plan that establishes the basic population and form and density of housing, which is necessary to drive infrastructure decisions. So you start with what it's going to look like, who's going to live there, how many people are going to be there, which drives infrastructure decisions, such as how big do your water and sewer need to be, the road infrastructure, whether it has capacity, how does transit respond in those circumstances. So the fundamental principle is that vision piece, which is what council is considering tonight, which will lead to those important infrastructure decisions down the road.
Thank you for that. And as long as you're up, is it 3,000 square feet for the grocery store, or is it 3,000 square meters, which would be 30,000 square feet?
To you, Mr. Mayor, it is square meters.
Okay. And is that 3,000 square meters the maximum retail in this OPA?
That is a minimum.
So that's a minimum, not a maximum. Thank you. Do we have an opinion as to what the appropriate ratio between residents and retail might be?
There are standards out there. Paul, do you have we're looking at each other. There are standards, but we just don't have them at our hands. Yep.
All right. But you believe that this OPA leaves you all the room you need to apply those standards?
Yeah, I think to you, Mr. Mayor, there is flexibility in the policies, and they're deliberately set at minimums so that we have an opportunity to integrate retail opportunities with the specific form that's going in there. And there are a lot of creative ways, as long as we have the tools in place. If you the area around Leslie and Shepherd, how that's evolved from large box retail to building large box retail with residential on top, it does allow a lot of flexibility. So when we set minimums, we have a lot more creativity that's available to us to respond to market conditions, to respond to demand in the area as well.
So finally, for a very, very long time, for 3 decades, the town's been concerned about revitalizing and upgrading the quality of life on Kerr Street and the conditions for success of retail. Does anybody in planning consider that the retail environment on Kerr Street for the 2 or 3 blocks south of here, does anybody have a view as to whether that retail environment and those on the west side, as you go down 2 or 3 blocks, is that overutilized retail space, underutilized retail space? Is there room to grow there, or what?
In response, Mr. Mayor, I think what we've seen along Kerr is opportunities to enhance the retail along there. We've had a number of different applicants and owners come to us looking to rebuild on some of those sites. So I think there's opportunity along the length of Kerr Street. And I think what this application does, and I think the way Paul had explained it, is it kickstarts that in a little bit of momentum. The other thing that I will add, just as it relates to the overall commercial picture, is we're undertaking our official plan review program right now, as council is aware. And one of the pieces to that is to look at the overall commercial structure. We did complete a study a few years ago, the employment commercial study, and we know that there's some deficits in different parts of the town, and really the opportunity through that is going to be to really see where can we enhance those opportunities for commercial, how do we ensure that we are striking the right minimums through redevelopment, and so that would include Kerr as well.
Thank you very much. I find that helpful information. Thank you for providing it. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation? They weren't there when I looked last. Councillor Shi, welcome to the questioning. For whom is your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a question for our staff. So I know from this project we have over 1,800 new units. So I believe there's a lot of newcomers and young families move in the future. So do we consider about the school capacity close by? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly through the application process, we do look at school capacity. There is a school to the southeast, which would be the catchment area for this development. Also through the application process, we do engage our school board partners on this. Paul may have the exact specifics in terms of their commentary, but my understanding was there wasn't any negative response from the school boards.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, he's gone. All right, thank you, Councillor Shi. On the off chance that we're now ready for the next delegation, Madam Clerk, would you like to call the next delegation?
The next delegation is Meredith Baker, representing the owner of 171 Spears Road.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Can you hear me all right?
We hear you very well, thank you. We look forward to your information.
Thank you. As stated, my name is Meredith Baker. I'm a lawyer with Turks Mazza Associates. My colleague Nancy Smith submitted a letter with respect to the proposed official plan amendment 51 on behalf of our client 120-46905 Ontario Inc. And I'm here to speak briefly to that letter. Our client is the owner of 171 Spears Road, which is the largest of the 5 properties in the development plan area. Our client has put 3 requests before you this evening. The first is that council defer its consideration of this agenda item. The second is that town staff review our client's recent submission, which is a communication from our client's planning consultant, Ms. Dana Anderson at MHBC, and sets out proposed changes to OPA 51. That communication is attached to Ms. Smith's letter before you this evening. And the third request is that council encourage all other development plan area landowners to contact our client to discuss this proposal put forward by our client. As noted in our letter, the town's official plan policies require a comprehensive development plan for the development plan area. We thank council for recognizing this fact in its decision-making on this matter to date. Unfortunately, since council's deferral of this matter in September, not one of the development plan area owners has contacted our client regarding its proposal until this week, when our client's principal, Dr. Shahidi, did finally receive a call back from one landowner. That owner said he would relay the discussion to the other development plan area owners. Staff also contacted our client's planning consultant to discuss our client's proposal. However, the staff report before you does not reflect that proposal or consider that proposal, as the report had already been drafted for this evening's meeting. To date, our client has had no feedback from the development plan area owners on its proposal. In these circumstances, a further deferral is prudent for various reasons. We need to get this plan right for generations to come. We also need a comprehensive development plan that all owners can support. The alternative is a costly and adversarial Ontario Land Tribunal proceeding, which is in no one's interest. We request that Council give the cooperative approach more time. Our client is confident that a satisfactory comprehensive development plan can be achieved that meets all interests without recourse to the tribunal. Thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Baker, for your information and for bringing that to us. Councillor O'Meara?
Thank you, Your Worship. That was good side-eye. Thank you. Ms. Baker, just a question. I heard you say that nobody contacted your client. Did your client reach out to any of the developers, or are they waiting to be approached? I mean, it seems to me like we just can't get people to talk to each other, which at this level and with this magnitude and this money seems a little very difficult for me to comprehend. So I'm wondering if you can just clear up on why people can't talk to each other, or they haven't.
Yes, thank you, Councillor O'Meara. My understanding is that our client did try to reach out to various landowners on various occasions and wasn't receiving calls back. I don't have many specifics beyond that, but that's my understanding.
Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Worship. This is, I'm going to direct this to staff. I'm just looking at some of the history between Councillor Duddick and myself in discussions with your client. We've had, within the last year, we've had discussions back and forth, and we've made it very clear that there had to be discussions with the other landowners with respect to your client, and we were assured that that was going to happen. At this point in time, I'm a little disturbed that this letter or report has come in so late with respect to the non-discussion. So I'm going to ask staff, Paul, with respect to where are we at on the status of those discussions with Dr. Sheedy and the other landowners, if we have any involvement with this whatsoever.
Through you, Your Worship. From day one, staff did facilitate landowner coordination meetings, and that did include the owner of 171 Spears Road. And they were participating with other landowners in that process. And once the official plan amendment application was submitted, they were not a participating party or an applicant for that application. However, they have made a number of submissions to Council with respect to comments on the proposed official plan amendment, which staff have taken under advisement when preparing the proposed official plan amendment, with exception to the last set of comments as they were submitted after the staff report was due.
Okay, I'm just looking at timing here with respect to the comments that were provided. Were they integrated in the report in your initial discussions with the client, 171?
Through you, Your Worship, the initial submission made by 171 Spears was taken under advisement, and it did inform the proposed official plan amendment before Council today. The second set of comments, like I said, was received after the staff report was due. However, staff did meet with the owner's planning consultant and did have a productive discussion, I think, on the 4 points in the letter. I think there was one point where that we would not be able to support, and that's the 4.5 FSI. By comparison, that's about double what's in the comprehensive development plan today. So we're not sure what that would look like. The supporting studies don't address that additional density. So when we consider, for example, the transportation impact in the current Spears intersection, we're not sure what that means in terms of coordinating the development with infrastructure. So without updated studies, we wouldn't be able to support that amount of increased density.
Thank you, Paul. Last question, with respect to the negotiations with the landowners, if we proceed in approving the OPA tonight, those discussions would continue on with 171 and the other landowners and the town?
Through your worship, the discussions amongst the landowners, it does happen somewhat outside of the planning process. It's more of a kind of private matter. But staff would continue to encourage that collaboration amongst the landowners and the coordination as well. If council did approve the proposed official plan amendment tonight, 171 Spears would have a right of appeal as well to the tribunal, so there's that route as well. They also have the ability to submit their own official plan amendment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I think you brought out some very interesting and useful information there in terms of the 171 folks having a right to bring their own proposed amendment. Councillor Elgar?
Mayor Burton, I just want to confirm that the staff did give the Olive Branch the opportunity for 171 to meet with the people, the other parties. Did I hear that correct?
Through your worship, that is correct. In the earlier days, that's before this application was made, we made sure that the owner of 171 Spears was included and they did participate. However, as part of this application, they're not a participating applicant and have instead made comments on the application through council.
So they could have been a participant, so nobody was locking them out whatsoever.
Through your worship, it would have been a decision that they made to participate or not.
Thank you. That's what I need to hear.
All righty. Madam Clerk, I think we're ready for the next delegation.
Next delegation is Nicole LeBlanc, representing the West River Residents Association.
Welcome, Ms. LeBlanc. Council looks forward to hearing from you. And
She's coming, she's virtual.
I'm watching her sign in, I think.
Yep.
There we go.
Hopefully you can hear me now. Sorry, it takes a couple seconds for virtual to walk down the aisle. I'm Nicole LeBlanc, the president of the West River Residents Association. Gonna stop and make sure you guys can hear me okay?
We can see you and hear you very well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Mayor Burton, Council, and the Town of Oakville staff, as we've really seen quite a bit of movement from the initial proposal back in February when we spoke last. And I really wanted to take the time today to make sure that the WRRA, or West River Residents Association community, made sure to voice our thoughts on the project so that today, and as more decisions are made with respect to the development and the future, approval processes at current Spears, that we're considered a valuable partner in making sure that the development can fit into the existing community in the most holistic way. We also would like to note that overall, we are in support of development on this prime Oakville site, but wish to express some concerns that we still have. So in the density and height kind of topic, we were really happy to see that the changes have shown the largest towers placed next to the train tracks and reducing the impact of the bigger buildings on the streetscape and shadowing, etc. Our real concerns are really still around height and density. We realize that phasing will help minimize traffic in the area, but once the whole project is built, the overall density and height is just so far beyond the original town official plan of 16 with bonusing, which I know we can't really abide by anymore. But the reality is there really hasn't been much justification of the buildings that exceed what already is in the area, which is the 21 stories of rain and census. So our concern is really the potential of a new precedent being set for future development, and not just for West River, but for all of Oakville. So we understand challenges from the province to promote additional density in these areas, but would like to see some movement in the heights of the tallest buildings to something more in line with the area. In regards to traffic, it has been said that the project will be sensitive to the negative traffic impacts in the area. We know that there are at least six lights and a pedestrian crosswalk on Kerr Street from Shepherd to Rebecca, compared to only 3 stop signs on Queen Mary. We already see many cars who use this instead of Queen Mary instead of Kerr Street during busy periods. One idea to think of as we move forward in the process is really to think about not allowing a straight through from the Shepherd extension, and therefore forcing traffic down Queen Mary to the south. So we understand that this isn't part of the OPA today, but just something we wanted to have documented. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and it's come up already many times today, is about complete community. So we have seen in the changes and the staff report that staff increased the amount of commercial space to at least have one site available for a grocery store. We understand that the town cannot force the brand to stay or determine who ends up with a lease for the space, but we feel that the town has done everything in their power to keep a reasonably priced grocery store as part of this development. That being said, we'd like to express to the developers that it is of great importance to work together and make sure that this essential service is available within walking distance for our most vulnerable residents. We still feel that the overall commercial space is not enough for the destination of a pedestrian area that has been communicated by the developers and the project. As this project moves forward, we hope to see a further increase in commercial space, perhaps in all ground levels of the proposed buildings. This would make for a destination within Kerr Village area for residents to go for essential services and entertainment. The zoning will also still allow for a post office, which we feel is another essential service to keep in the area. We are still concerned with the 1 acre park not being a full acre, as the 5th site owner isn't completely on board of this project. We have already heard from that owner on behalf of that owner tonight. We feel that this application should not move ahead or should be modified without this parcel until the owner is part of the project. Without the last owner and that parcel of land, the park is half the size. The other thing I want to mention is when the phasing is started taking place, it's phase 2 is the landowner that isn't necessarily part of the application. So how do you get to phase 3 and 4 without phase 2? Which if you build phase 1, we're not going to get the grocery store back until phase 4 is built, which would be a huge delay in not having that grocery store. During our discussions with the town, it also came to light that there is a possibility to create a connection between this growth node with the GO train in Midtown. As the WRA, we are very much in favor of this and would like to see any opportunities to work this into the plan so that our residents have a safe and accessible way between these 2 points. We really want the best for businesses, residents, tenants, and the community at large as this project proceeds, and would like to offer our continued communication to work with the developer owners and town staff on this project as it moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. LeBlanc. Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Nicole. Excellent presentation. I take consideration with respect to the grocery store, and I guess we need clarification from staff. I was under the impression when the development started, the grocery store that exists would continue on until such time there would be almost like a changeover. There wouldn't be any lapse. But I'm a little concerned about Nicole's comment about phase 4. So can we have clarification on the grocery store? Because if a grocery store is shut down for long periods of time, it's going to be devastating for that community.
Through your worship, the official plan policies are not that prescriptive. It would allow for a variety of phasing scenarios and individual owners to develop. What's critical is that the phasing plan would require the development to be phased in a manner such that it wouldn't unduly impact the existing commercial uses. So there'd be enough parking, there wouldn't be safety hazards for pedestrians to access those stores. But it's not prescriptive in terms of what specific part of a property develops first and last.
Nicole's comment on phase 4, is that when the commercial development of the grocery store would happen?
Through your worship, that is where the grocery store is shown on the comprehensive development plan, so that would be correct, phase 3.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor McNeice.
Thank you, Your Worship. There were some really good points brought up in this delegation. I was encouraged to hear about the growth node connection to Midtown. I'd just like to know a little bit more about it. Maybe it's to staff. Would this be an at-grade pedestrian cyclist connection? Because I know that kind of road that goes up, down, and around is not super pedestrian friendly, even though it's within a 15-minute walk.
Through your worship, the connection between Upper Kerr and Midtown, that's an existing official plan policy that's specific for Kerr Village. So through this development application, we explored different means of implementing it, including Section 37 of the Planning Act, which has now been repealed and we can't rely on that anymore. However, there's a section in the staff report which outlines the status of that connection, and that staff have investigated different alignments for it, and they're currently in talks with Ministry of Transportation staff. So it would be a pedestrian cycling connection at grade across the valley.
So would this be an expansion of the bridge, essentially, the rail bridge? Or?
Through your worship, the alignment's still being determined. I believe they're also looking at an alignment under the QEW deck as well, so it kind of sister that, but be under it.
Thank you. One other question just related to sort of vibrant retail and placemaking. I know it was mentioned in the urban design brief, and we're at the official plan amendment stage, but what sort of tools for implementation might we have to encourage placemaking, vibrant retail, and things like that the delegate mentioned?
Through you, your worship, that's an excellent point, and one that is challenging on this site because of the grade separation and the disconnection between the ground floor and the street. So it's something that staff did think about carefully, and given the urban, more fine-grained street network that's proposed through this comprehensive development plan and the limited area of the ground floor of the buildings, what the proposed official plan amendment does is essentially it maxes out the commercial area on the floor plate of the buildings. So the floor plates of the proposed buildings will be very different than what exists today in the big box format. And as Mr. Sams mentioned, the plaza on Kerr, that's not including the cinema site, it's about 10,000 square meters. The grocery store is about 3,000 square meters. And there's also additional requirements for more commercial GFA beyond that in the proposed official plan amendment for council. And like Mr. Charles mentioned, that's a minimum, it's not a maximum. It's setting a floor, not a ceiling.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Ms. LeBlanc, for the time you took to bring your information. Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation, please?
The next delegation is Warren Toll on behalf of West Kerr Village Residents Association.
Mr. Toll, welcome. Council looks forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, and residents. I'm Warren Toll, and I'm the president of the West Kerr Village Residents Association, and have been for, I think, about 18 years. Too long. However, here I am. I just want to start with a personal thought, and that is at its core, the vision of Oakville is to be the most livable town in Canada. Its mission is to create and preserve Canada's most livable community by enhancing the natural, cultural, and economic environments. Oakville is a town founded in the aesthetic, lifestyle, and community of the downtown core. Preserving the integrity of the original GTA cottage town is what continues to be the calling card for small businesses, local residents, families, arts and culture, and newcomers. Kerr Village and downtown Oakville need to be treated like a historical heritage town site. We should be looking at developments and visuals that are more similar to European villages than to skyscrapers and cityscapes. Kerr Village and downtown Oakville are the Santa Claus Parade, the movie set of a small town, the Jazz Festival, Kerr Fest, the movie theaters at the site, the Moonshine Cafe, bustling patios. We're parks and green spaces, lighthouses, families, retirees, and those looking for a quieter pace to come here because we provide just that for them. We're not the Mississauga City Centre. We are not Brampton. We are not Toronto. We are the reason people choose to commute to these places every day. So they come back home to a quiet town with all of the comforts of the big city, but the visuals of a town, the traffic of a small town, and the heart of a community that wants to continue to be one of the best places to live in Canada. We want new developments south of the QE to fit in with the landscape of the downtown core visually, economically, and with the current future residents in mind. We need these developments to fall in line with the Oakville's existing restrictions. The Rain buildings are already pushing those limits and have deteriorated the aesthetic and small town feel of entering Kerr Village. We care about the environment, the impact of construction on our local community, the air quality for our families, and the noise and visual pollution. We are in support of new development. However, development needs to be scaled based on the capacity of infrastructure and the potential of what we can accommodate to this area. I'll just speak to green space and parks for a moment. The new development and housing density should certainly contain a park and public spaces for all people in the community to enjoy. The park must be designated in line with the town of Oakville-owned parks that contain features for children such as uninterrupted grass, climbing frames, trees, water features, rather than an urban park space. A good example would be Forester Park in the West River. It's a wonderful place. The current proposal shows the park that is a quarter of the park space used by the infrastructure to service the underground parking garage, as well as a loss of green space along the eastern edge of the park, which effectively reduces the accessible green space for the public. It is proposed that the park size should be increased to compensate for any loss of park space due to infrastructure. Also to be noted, as in one of the reports, much of the park space in the area belong to elementary schools, École Sainte Marie and Oakwood. And these parks are not accessible to the public during weekdays. There is an increased community need for a large child and community-friendly park in the development instead of an urban-style park, as I said. Let's talk about traffic for a moment. With the density and quantity of the buildings proposed, there will be a significant negative impact on the existing neighborhoods and residents and the local businesses. The current Kerr Street-Spears intersection is nearly at capacity, and this development depends on three things: Metrolink's Kerr Street underpass, the St. Augustine Drive extension, and the Shepherd extensions. How does the town, these are rhetorical questions for the most part coming up, but how does the town and developers plan to address the issue without the Metrolink's underpass? The St. Augustine Road extension, as proposed, would have significant negative impact on all residents of the West Kerr Village residing south of Spears Road and between Kerr Street and Dorval. There is currently a speed issue in the neighborhood on Maurice and Phelan, and St. Augustine for that matter, in particular, and this proposal would exacerbate this issue and would direct significant traffic into the neighborhood and right past an elementary school. This is important as well. The transportation study submitted by Urban Strategy and BA Group is based on 3 sites in Brampton, in areas that are more highly developed than the current Kerr and Spears location. The 3 sites in Brampton have significantly more transportation connection and all have 3 and 4 lane roads. Kerr Street, as we know, is 1 lane in either direction, and Spears is 2 lanes in either direction. So apples and oranges once again. Is the traffic study submitted representative of the actual Oakville site? Just to be considered and take into record, please. Has the town of Oakville independently evaluated and validated the traffic study based on the actual site and road layout? The BA Group traffic survey is based on the assumption that the underpass is in place by 2031. They also do run scenarios in the event of a delay and temporary measures. However, they did not examine the traffic if the underpass is not built. BA Group notes that there will be significant increases in traffic and poses a risk. Again, some questions. Has the town or developers done a risk assessment on this scenario? What does the traffic look like without the underpass? What does the development look like without the underpass? What does the development look like without 171 Spears Road included? The phase plan does not include a grocery store until phase 3 or 4 is developed, which is many years from now. The site would need to be demolished. Amenities to the community would be missing for at least 5+ years, in our opinion, and it would take years to complete phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 2 depends on 171 Spears agreeing to the proposed development, which is not currently the situation. How can urban strategies seek rezoning and approval for the developing of a site that is not owned by them? How can the town approve a development where the traffic and access is through lands not part of the consortium seeking development? I'll wrap this up with some comments on the density, of course. The current urban strategies plan is asking for a significant increase in the allowable density beyond that provided for the town's official plan, Urban Core, prior to its update in the end of 2021. Bonusing may be considered where there are public benefits such as affordable housing, community services. This was also noted by the WRRA in their submission, which we are aligned with. Let's not forget the 2 large development sites in behind the Rain buildings that are still massive holes in the ground waiting to be developed. There is currently a planning permit application for another tall building opposite Rain along Spears and on another partially developed parcel of land. If this moves ahead, this and the development is approximately 2,200 new dwellings in the Kerr-Spears intersection. How many cars would that mean? I'm not sure. I couldn't guess. The town needs to be looking at impact from Trafalgar to 4th Line as a whole and have a comprehensive infrastructure plan and stage development plan to support any development at Kerr and Spears. There's a lot more work to do on this, obviously, a lot of unanswered questions. So I think we do need to take our time moving forward here rather than just jumping right into this massive development. One thing, the crux of my talk here is this. Is there a way to decrease the density at the current proposed location in the Kerr Village and disperse a major fraction of condo units to the Midtown developments and or relocate to future developments between Trafalgar Road and the Ford plant along the QEW? We all know that massive parcel of land is going to be, I've heard many towers of 45 stories and higher. I'm not sure, but can we take a large portion of this development and just move it up that way? Sounds simple. Mr. Mayor, councilors, you have a great opportunity to make history with your decisions. Think of the legacy that you can leave for decades to come, for generations to enjoy. You can leave your mark while achieving the necessary growth at the same time. And very few people get the chance to influence such a challenge. And if we get this right, it will enhance lives in this community forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren, for the
2 seconds to go.
Well, you must be in a business where timing is everything.
I am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Further to your comment on the park space, perhaps staff, if this were Bill 23, what would that park space have called for? Because this is under the certain hectares, it reduces the amount of park that has to be provided?
Could you repeat that, please? Or is that a comment? This is for planning?
Yeah, Warren, he's chasing some of your points with planning, and I think we're anticipating that you could sit and enjoy it.
Very good.
Thanks.
Sean's still there.
And Sean and Nav are still to go, but we don't need to make people stand unnecessarily. Mr. Barrett.
Through your worship, this issue was brought up at the statutory public meeting as well. And the way we calculated it before Bill 26 was, given the amount of units, the amount of park space that could be required actually exceeded the size of the site itself, the 4.8 hectares.
So pre-23, it would have been somewhat larger than it currently says?
Absolutely. It would have been, however, through review of the development application, there is a balance that needs to be struck because this is a growth area that is required to accommodate growth. From day one, it was clearly communicated to the landowners that this needs to be a public park, given the deficiency of public parks in the area. And there's a specific form and function. And based on staff's review, the size of 1 acre was deemed to be appropriate given the future demands of the area.
Great, thank you very much. And your other comment about Midtown, it's full. There will be an OPA coming through this spring, and invite you to stay on top of that. I think you'll be pleased with the density that you're going to see there.
Thank you, Councillor Giddings. Councillor O'Meara and Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to Mr. Toll, I was wondering, you've stayed with us this long. I was wondering if you have the desire to stay with us for the next agenda item, if you were planning on doing that.
I'm uncertain.
I asked that because I think a lot of what you said right in this past 10 minutes, you are going to be very educated and learn a lot on what's happening and why we're doing what we're doing and where we're going, what we're going. So it might be advantageous if you stayed with us this long just to hang around a little bit to hear the next one, because it might help. It's going to help all of us. That's all I wanted to add there, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Nanda.
Thank you, Mayor. My question, I guess, is towards staff again. In terms of sustainability, if this is a parcel that's supposed to be a livable community, we're hearing that a grocery store may not come in by phase 3 or phase 4. What expectations can we have in terms of infrastructure and support for the community if you're going to be building these stories, like with so many residents coming in? What kind of support are they going to receive in phase 1 and phase 2 in terms of infrastructure?
Through you, Your Worship, the initial plan for Kerr Village, which was entitled the Plan for Kerr Village, which informed the current livable Oakville policies, it was very specific to coordinate growth with infrastructure, and that's the exact same approach we took through reviewing this official plan amendment application. So you'll see there's very detailed phasing policies that are proposed to be added to the official plan to coordinate the growth with infrastructure, including transportation infrastructure. The phasing plan will also provide for example, one owner to redevelop, but still allow for the balance of the commercial plaza to operate. So we'll be looking at that as well.
So in terms of the grocery store, if that's not there for a while, where would residents have to go for basic needs such as groceries? How far would they have to travel if it seems like this grocery store is a big need for this community? So where would residents go for that sort of basic need? How far would they have to travel for that then?
Through Your Worship, That was a very important concern that was raised by the public, and through the proposed OPA, we've addressed it to the maximum limit that the Planning Act will allow, and that's encouraging a grocery store and providing for the space for a grocery store. I believe the closest grocery store, aside from the organic grocery store that's also in Kerr Village, would be Fortino's on Lakeshore.
How far would that be in terms of travel time?
Through your worship, I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it's multiple kilometers away.
Mr. Barrett, could you, I think there are people here and possibly watching who either missed or perhaps didn't understand your discussion of the use of the tool that we call a hold. And I wonder if you want to go through that again in maybe even plainer language than before, because that might help people understand the plan you came up with to deal with this.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the proposed official plan amendment would add allowances for the town to enact holding provisions. And what a holding zone essentially does is it would permit development, but only on condition that certain conditions are satisfied. And in this example, the town could include holding provisions that link development with infrastructure, like key milestones, like the development of the Kerr Street underpass and that additional transportation capacity. Through holding zones can require implementation of landowner cost-sharing agreements. That is to provide water, wastewater, the park, pedestrian connections. So through this official plan amendment, it will provide additional tools for the town to actually implement the proposed official plan amendment and specifically the comprehensive development plan.
And then finally, Mr. Barrett, could you also help people understand that this is only an official plan amendment? It's not zoning, it's not a development application or any of the other future steps that will come to council and if we pass this OPA, be governed by these new policies, which Mr. Barrett has just summarized for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. That's correct. So this is a framework, essentially, to review future development applications. There's many, if you will, pieces to the puzzle here. And the point of this official plan amendment application is to provide that comprehensive development plan. What is it going to look like? Where are the key amenities and features located? What infrastructure is required? Does it need to be phased? And I believe all of those points have been addressed in the comprehensive development plan before council.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. That helps me. I hope it's helpful to others. Madam Clerk, could you call the, oh, wait, Councillor Grant and Councillor Chisholm.
Since we're talking a bit about retail, and this is a framework, I understand that completely. But everything that I read from the report or even through Appendix F talks about minimal surface parking. And if we're talking about retail space, I realize, and I know the area well, that there's a lot of people who do walk to the grocery store, who do walk to the drugstore, but there's an equal number of seniors who rely on a motor vehicle to get themselves there and get their groceries back home. So if we're talking about minimal parking surfaces, what kind of parking are we looking for these retail spaces?
Through your worship, that is correct. The official plan even currently requires surface parking to be minimized in these areas. And the type of commercial parking that would be provided would be below grade or structured. So in this case, looking at the comprehensive development plan, there's structured parking proposed along the rail corridor within the 30-meter rail setback. There's also underground parking proposed essentially amongst the whole comprehensive development plan itself.
But for retail as well?
Through your worship, that's correct. So This is the official plan amendment, which will set the framework. The zoning bylaw amendment stands on its own, and it will require parking for retail.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grant, for bringing that out. I think that was helpful to everybody. Councillor Chisholm?
Thank you, Worship. Just to add to your comments with respect to what we're approving is an official plan amendment. Just for clarity's sake and for the public, Paul, with respect to approving this opens it up for applications to come through for development. Does it also, with the report on the concepts of the buildings and where they are in their height, is that an approval that we're doing tonight, or are we just approving an official plan amendment for development?
Through your worship, the proposed OPA, I'll answer this in two parts, for everything but 171 Spears and 171 Spears. So for everything but 171 Spears, it is an approval for building height. And the additional metric that's being added is floor space index. So why that's important is because of the transportation capacity in the area. It regulates the massing of the building and the size of it and the number of units, essentially. So this proposed official plan amendment would add in caps, so essentially a ceiling for the floor space index for everything but 171 Spears. For 171 Spears, recognizing that the landowner was not an applicant for this official plan amendment, it does not include a floor space index cap. That's being deferred to the development process. Also, in terms of the commercial floor area, there's not a minimum amount of commercial floor area for 171 Spears. That, again, is being deferred to the development process. The building heights, though, the proposed official plan amendment for 171 Spears mostly relies on the existing policy permissions in place today. That's after the province repealed Section 37 of the Planning Act and bonusing, but it does add building height permissions adjacent to the rail corridor for 171 Spears.
So in your comments, so the 1,841 units would be, if we approve this tonight, that would approve those number of units in that site. Is that correct?
Through your worship, the number of units cited in the staff report and the staff presentation, it's essentially a mathematical equation which divides the overall floor area by the average size of a unit. So as developments come in, the actual amount of units will be known, but it should be quite close to that number.
So the debate after the fact, if we did approve the OPA on the heights, we would have no negotiation power after the approval tonight on the heights of those buildings. Is that correct?
Through your worship, the heights in the official plan amendment, there's a minimum and a maximum. So through a future development application, in this case, every single site would need a rezoning application. We'd see more detailed plans, and the building heights could come under the maximum and over the minimum. But once the maximum is established in the official plan amendment, usually the zoning would also follow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm. I believe now we might ask for the next delegation. It's been pointed out to me that the clock has gone past 10 p.m. Our bylaw, our procedure bylaw allows us to go to 10:30, at which time we have a hard stop unless council has passed a motion to continue past the hour. And to do that, we need one brave soul to bring a motion which is in order at any time to do that, if anybody wants to. Well then, depending on your questioning, you could effectively delay a decision on this item too, if that's your goal. Councillor O'Meara. Oh, thank you.
A point of clarification, like, we can do that at 10:28 if we have to. I'm just trying to figure out.
The motion's
Once
in
we
or-
do this, then it allows the last one, which we probably will need a lot more time unless everybody likes to stay here until midnight.
The motion's in order. You could vote against it.
Thank you, I will.
All those in favor of extending the hour, raise your hand. All two of us? Anybody against? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, well, at 10:30, we're done, kids. Madam Clerk, I still would like to hear the next delegation.
The next delegation is Pierre Sabagon.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, councilors, staff, as well as any other public members here. I have a brief presentation for you. I'll try to be way under 10 minutes. Next slide, please. Well, the discussion items which I want to focus on is the land use planning context, as well how does Halton Region plan for growth? What does this mean for Kerr Village, the original population growth targets, would change to minimum density, and what has changed for Kerr Village? What has Halton Region recommended as a minimum density target for Kerr Village? And were public concerns addressed by the town's recommendation report and a conclusion? Next slide. As you're all aware, I must assume that it's from the province downloads to the region and then to the town of Oakville. Next slide. Now, this is quite elaborate in regards to how does the Halton region plan for growth. In 2041, Halton has planned a target of 931,000 people and 420,000 jobs. In the various three sections, the land use areas, it's divided between designated green field as well as built-up areas. And the next panel over, it's in regards to how we'll achieve this through intensification target as well as density target. I won't go in details because it'll take too much time. Lastly, the last panel is in regards to how we determine the number of people based on, obviously, people, jobs, divided by the land area, which will give you a density, which is people plus jobs per hectare. And as you can see at the very bottom on the right-hand side, the built-up areas is the gross developable land area, not the net. Next slide, please. Now, this was what it looked like prior to the OPA amendment number 19, and it was bylaw relating to bylaw 2017-19. As you can see, for Kerr Village, there were supposed to be 5,000 residents and 1,500 jobs. Now, next slide. Now, in December 4th, 2017, I believe council approved the amendment whereby you eliminated growth targets, and now what you have is minimum densities. And so therefore, a minimum planned density shall be established for Kerr Village through the provincial plan conformity coordinated with Halton Region. Next slide, please. You've seen this already, which Paul has presented in regards to the site, as well as in regards to the change in the height of the buildings to try to make it more friendly for the streetscape area. Below as well, Paul mentioned about the number of units will be 1,847. Now, I'll go into further detail in that, but this land use map on the right-hand side dictates that the top area where this development will go has been changed into core urban area. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, just back, sorry. Now, these heights that are shown here, they're inconsistent with the livable Oakville plan because the core dense designation was between 8 stories and, I made an error there, 16 stories. With bonusing, it would push it up to 20. Next slide. Now, as you can see on the far left, The growth plan, intensification and strategic growth plan for growth area density, has for growth, 5, for urban growth centers, the minimum density is 200 residents and jobs combined per acre by 2031. That's from the region of Halton. The next panel shows you how the growth is. At the very top, the town of Oakville has high density, and it ranges from, I can't see completely, but it ranges from 300 ppj per hectare to 500 plus ppj per hectare. Now, with respect to the actual proposal, which you have on hand, 23.7.1, the lands designated shows the area for area A, B, C, and D, whereby the FSI is 4.5, which gives you maximum of 22 building height, and 28. And similarly, it goes down to the various other areas stipulating what the height of the buildings will be. Next slide, please. Now, population of household forecast for the local municipalities from the region of Halton indicated that there will be, as you see Oakville there, the growth expected addition of 111,000 between 2021 and 2041. And the next table 2A shows the person per unit for new units by municipal area has 2.68 overall for the town of Oakville. But this should not be the actual amount which will be calculated based on various assumptions. On the right-hand side, it has the total units of 1,841. So based on various assumptions that I've taken, the number of units as per the Urban Strategic Inc. study was, as I said, 1,841. Now, Halton region persons per unity by housing type, namely apartments, is 2.02, apartments, condos, whatever, but it doesn't relate to single-family homes, that sort of thing, or townhouses. Now, the post-exploration land area is 4.8 per the chart. Now, if you take the total amount of 1,247 units times it by the 2.02 persons per unit, you'll have a total of 3,731 persons that's expected to fit into this area. This translates, if you take the 3,731 divided by 4.8 acres, you have a total of 771 persons per hectare. This is way above what was anticipated of 300 to 500 people per hectare. Now, I must remind you as well that this does not include jobs, namely the commercial area for the grocery store. So therefore, overall, this is inconsistent with the minimum density of 200 residents and jobs combined per area. Next slide. Thank you. Now, in regards to whether or not the heights are set, they are in regards to the maximum building height if you approve this OPA. But however, there will be opportunities by the developers to increase the height based on the affordable units, which there's a specific exemption within the OPA. In order to address the concern about the grocery area, the potential exists for the town to say, okay, we'll give you that extra exemption for if you increase the capacity or the amount of area for grocery. So that may be able to handle the fact that, okay, phase 4 may have the grocery as it is right now, but the potential exists for the other buildings to have commercial space in order to address some of the current concerns with respect to grocery and for the ability of the residents to walk to that area. Now, the next slide. My conclusion, very fast, 42 seconds. I do understand there's a need for intensification to reduce urban expansion as well as to preserve the farmlands. However, the proposed modification to the existing official plan policies, they are inconsistent with the livable Oakville plan relating to building heights, as well as the higher density that's suggested for the Upper Kerr Village Core Urban District. I just want to thank Council for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. One thing that's important, I think, is to address affordable housing, which I hope that this development will accommodate, which means there may be an increase in the floor areas, but by the same token, if you reduce the height of the building from the max to maybe 21 within the area, you will be able to convert it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the time you took to prepare and present your information to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I much appreciate the time taken. Take care.
Okay. Madam Clerk, let me check. I need my screen back to see. All right. The next delegation, I think we're free to call now.
The next delegation is Rose Anna Della Penna.
I'll make it quick because I know everybody wants to go home. I'm going to try to be politically correct, but my nature is not to be politically correct. And I was okay till the staff member said he was happy with the proposal. Well, the public isn't. The public consultation for this development was poor. Okay, now I'm going to start my presentation. Okay, welcome to the new council members. Your vote and decisions will affect future generations, and I hope you do a good job in your new job. To the old council, you're worth your weight in gold. I think you're the best government in the world. Keep doing what you're doing because Oakville is Oakville because of what you've done. Everybody on the council and mayor included. Okay, now what I see, maybe a lot of people don't see, is this land is a large amount of land and it's a very important piece of land. It's just not any development. What the town has spent so much money on is redeveloping the downtown, the Oakville Harbor, Tannery, the fire station, Trafalgar Community Center, West Side Park. It's almost like you need to continue it to this last piece of land. I consider this area the spine, the soul, the character of Oakville. When we have visitors, where do we bring people to? It's the downtown. So when you go to evaluate that, just remember that it's the core and the spirit of Oakville. And how much money you've also spent on developing the downtown. You know what, just finish it off. Don't let I don't want this council to bow into the province. I don't want you to bow into the developers. Stick to your guns, you're doing a good job. But this is the last piece of the puzzle, and we have to get it right. Ray, I think you're on board with me on that one, because I know you mentioned it, and I thought, yay, he's on board. This is very important. This is just not a normal development. I can say that with passion, because this is my neighborhood. We were one of the original 8,000 people of Oakville, and I know it's my family and a lot of the people I know that built this town, and I wanted to get better, not worse. And I don't want you to bow in to the Doug Ford and his intensification. I'm going to keep my comments clean now. Okay. This development proposal is not good enough. It's a bunch of square buildings. We deserve better than square buildings. What am I going to do? Drive down Kerr Street and I'm going down a bowling alley? Guys, please. The person who got it right on the nail was Nicole from the West River Association. She said that this proposal has 90% more flooring than the original Oakville livable plan. 90% more. That's why the gentleman above me, before me, said there's too many residents. Guys, you know what? It's too much. 90% of what the original plan said. We have to stick to our Oakville livable plan as best we can. This proposal has no vision, no theme, no concept. All I see is a bunch of developers and owners wanting to cash in. Owners that, I'm sorry, I can say this because I'm a resident, they didn't invest any money in that community up until today. Come on. It's one of the worst malls in Oakville. I can say that, you guys can't say it. Come on. They want to cash in. Well, cash in with a concept that has vision and foresight that would make us proud. Ray, how am I doing?
You're doing great.
Thank you. Okay, another thing about the town staff. Well, I was fine till the town says they were happy with the proposal. Well, that triggered me because the public isn't. The process didn't work. I'm part of the West Kerr Residents Association. I did not find out about the February 6th meeting till the morning of, because when I phoned town staff, I'm sorry, we had a meeting January 19th. They had my email. Why didn't they let us know there was a very important public consultation on February the 6th? On February the 6th, it was on a Zoom. There were 43 questions asked. I was noting that because I asked 12 questions and not one of my questions was answered. The consultant was so busy making a joke of the fact that someone, who was me, said, we're having a meeting on Valentine's Day, instead of answering any of my other questions. The process didn't work, guys. You know what? It didn't work. We have to go back and redo the public consultation for this development and have an in-person meeting because studies have shown that Zoom meetings are ineffective. I've done it. Okay, so February 6th, 42 out of 43 questions. I'm wondering how many of those were answered. Not many. And to be honest, I personally think the consultants and the owners are just merely going through the process. They're not listening to the residents. You know what? I've invested in, that's my community. You're destroying my community. And when they keep talking about the grocery store, yeah, a lot of those residents need to go to that grocery store because they can't afford anything else in Oakville. And I'm sorry, with 1,800 people, homes, how many cars? There's going to be room for me to go park in front of the new grocery store to pick up food? No, they're not going to allot parking spots for that food store if we get it in there. Another thing, I hate to say this, but I pick up everything. On the September 6th meeting, that we were supposed to vote that was deferred. 86 people were on the February 6th meeting. Well, you know what? I'm part of the West Kerr Residents Association, and I had just done the emails. I went through those emails, and there were probably 3 or 4 emails from the residents from West Kerr, that side. And I don't know how many on the River side, but I bet you those 86 people that were tuned into that meeting were people with vested interests. You know what I mean? It wasn't the residents at that meeting. Okay, that's that. Okay, I think I'm speaking on a lot of people in the GTA. We all feel the pressure of intensification, and you as council, you probably feel it even more than me. I think Oakville has done a tremendous job in this area. I think we've raised our numbers, and I think the province should pat us on the back, but they want more, and they're not going to stop wanting more. So I want this council to stand up to the province and say, you know what, and get together with the other mayors and say, come on, what you're asking is an impossibility. I have never seen a government so wishy-washy. So let's use the gift of time and, you know what I mean, deal with the province. I ask that you vote no for this proposal. It's not good enough. That's okay. I don't want to say any more of that. Okay. Okay. The staff should never say they're happy with the proposal. The public should say they're happy with the proposal. A height and just that 90% of that proposal is more than what the Oakville Livable Plan had. Liberty Village, I worked in that area, and try getting an apartment in Liberty Village. It's a mess, and yet you're paying $5,000, and no one's going to tell me that this development is going to have I think we can try to the best of our ability to have affordable housing, but everybody's going to try to cash out. And bicycle pathways, there's no bicycle pathways in that thing. And that's it. I have nothing else to say. Good luck. I'm proud of you. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Thank you, Ms. DePina. Council, in 2 minutes, the meeting will be over. I only have 2 things for you. If we end, well, the meeting is adjourned at 10:30 to, let me just give you the news on that. I'm adjourning the meeting until Wednesday at 4 p.m. Be there or be square, as they say. And we're down to a minute and a half. I don't really think we're going to get any more business done here tonight. So unless Councillor Grant and Councillor Haslett-Thiel have a burning desire to say what they want to say now, I think maybe you might want to hold it until Wednesday. Councillor Grant?
I'm willing to hold till Wednesday. I have some additional questions for the planners.
You might send them in to assist staff. Councillor Haslett-Thiel, 1 minute.
I had a question for one of the delegates, which is, are we going to get copies of those slides from, I believe it was Mr. Stephanie?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure he'll send them to you. Thank you, everybody. I'm adjourning the meeting until 4 p.m. Wednesday.